Chapter 3968. Connate Saint. Nyetion's eyes trembled again when he heard these words. Then his complexion sank, and he asked, could it be that he was a Saint Realm warrior when he was born? Yes. Fat Cat nodded. The ancient holy clans have different talents and strengths. This Aoyin Chigu has the talent and strength of Saint. He is definitely one of the top prodigies of the ancient holy clans. This. Nyetion went blank once again, unable to conceal the shock in his heart, which was written all over his face. The martial artists of the All Heavens holy world, even those with superior statuses, had to put in a lot of effort in order to reach the Saint Realm. But Aoyin Chigu of the ancient Holy Pardoning clan was born a saint. This kind of disparity really made people feel uncomfortable when they heard it. In fact, the world was unfair. Some people were born with great talents, while others were born with weak talents. Some were born as nobles, while others were born as beggars. Any kind of complaint would never change your situation. Only hard work could make you stronger. Fortunately, hard work was fair. If one did not succeed despite hard work, it only meant that one had not worked hard enough. Most of the martial artists of the ancient holy clans are born with the strength of the immortal state. People like Aoyin Chigu, who were born as saints, are rare. Fat Cat smiled and nodded. Nyetion nodded. Even if he was born as a saint, it is still rare to see him rise from the first tier of heavenly rhythm, holy disciple, to the 9th tier of heavenly righteousness, holy lord in 17 years. Indeed, breaking through 3 great realms in a span of more than 10 years was extremely rare, even for an ordinary person. But it was not the first time that Nyetion had seen someone who was born as a saint. His and Mo Rushi's child was a martial artist who was born as a saint. Thinking of this, he felt much better. The ancient holy tribe hasn't appeared for at least a few million years. I can't believe that the recruitment of the 5 academies has attracted the attention of the ancient holy tribe. This is unbelievable. At this moment, Fat Cat's expression changed slightly. She couldn't help but shake her head, sighed, and said, Nyetion, there is such an amnesty. With Tian Chi-gu around, I'm afraid it's impossible for you to take Wu Kuei. Are the people of the ancient holy tribe really that strong? Nyetion was stunned. He didn't think much of it. In his opinion, the ancient sacred clan was no different from ordinary warriors except for their talents and strength. He even felt that the combat power of the Aoyin Chigu before him might not even be as strong as the demon race's devil's son, Xiao Wanjie. At least up until now, he had not sensed any threatening aura from the 7 bones of pardoning heaven. The terror of the ancient Saint clan is not something you can see. The Fat Cat smiled bitterly and said, if there's a chance later, you can approach him and carefully sense his aura. Okay. Nyetion's eyes darkened, and he nodded. Since Fat Cat said so, Aoyin Chigu was indeed someone worthy of his attention. It seemed that the martial Kuei battle this time would be far more tragic than he had imagined. Up until now, Nyetion had already encountered a few opponents who were a threat to him. The holy light martial intent of the angels of light, the heaven's saintess, the demon race's devil's son, Xiao Wanjie, the myriad sound demon palace's young master, Gong Yuzigi, the unpredictable Mori Shire, and the Aoyin Chigu before him. None of these people were ordinary. Apart from them, there were also a few geniuses who had yet to show up. It seems that I have to integrate the universe singularity as soon as possible. Nyetion made up his mind to integrate the universe singularity after the 2nd round of the test. There were so many genius warriors, but Nyetion did not feel afraid. Instead, he was a little excited. If it was so easy to become the martial Kuei battle champion of the 5 academies, what would be the point? High up in the sky, Aoyin Chigu only said his name and did not say anything else. He then retreated to the side. Everyone, the 2nd round of the test will be held in another world. Following that, the green-robed old man continued. This world is one of the ancestral lands of the ancient sacred clan. Everyone can stay there for a month. The ancestral lands of the ancient sacred clan, a month. The crowd could not help but be excited when they heard the green-robed old man's words. The ancestral lands of the ancient sacred clan were definitely an extraordinary place. Who would have thought that the second round of the test would be held in the ancestral lands of the ancient sacred clan? The recruitment of the 5 academies this time was really a surprise. Everyone, don't be too excited. Let me finish speaking first. The green-robed old man said loudly and waved his hand to signal the crowd to be quiet. He then continued, "You can cultivate in the ancestral lands of the ancient sacred clan. However, if you want to pass the test, you have to find something." Something? What is it? The crowd's expression changed, and their eyes lit up with excitement. Although cultivating in the ancestral lands of the ancient sacred clan was attractive, passing the test was undoubtedly more important. This thing. At this moment, Aoyi Shigu took a step forward and extended his palm. In the middle of his palm, a crystal-clear liquid appeared. It looked like a ball of light, but it was liquid. What is this? The crowd looked at the crystal-clear liquid from afar, and their expressions changed. They could feel a strange aura coming from it. "This is the holy color rheumatism," Aoyi Shigu said loudly. Then he moved his palm. Instantly, the holy color rheumatism seemed to have sensed something and started to change. It became colorful and rippled in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the ripples of light passed through the crowd and reflected different colors on everyone's body. Everyone felt as though they were bathing in the light. It was extremely magical. Yet Tian frowned and had a strange expression on his face. At this moment, he felt a strange restlessness. It was as though the power of the bloodline had been triggered. Moreover, the aura of the holy color rheumatism was also very special. It was very strong, but not pungent. Instead, it had a strange fragrance. It was very fresh, and people couldn't help but take a few more sniffs. What a magical thing. It can actually improve the power of the bloodline of the martial artists. At this moment, the fat cat couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. As expected, Tian's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but exclaim. He carefully sensed it and found that the holy color rheumatism could greatly stimulate and promote the power of the bloodline. It seemed to be able to improve the power of the bloodline. Looking around, the other martial artists looked the same. They were excited and surprised. Chapter 3969. Tian looked at the sacred color rheumatism in Aoyi Shigu's hand with excitement in his eyes. The sacred color rheumatism had a strong effect on the power of blood. Perhaps he could make use of it to increase his strength again. In the sky, Aoyi Shigu seemed to have noticed something. He glanced at Tian with a cold look in his eyes. Tian knew that Aoyi Shigu had noticed him, but he did not react much. He smiled faintly. The sacred color rheumatism is everywhere in the ancient sacred clan's ancestral land. It might be in the bodies of the holy beasts, or it might be in some spiritual materials. It might even be in a remote place. Aoyi Shigu glanced at the crowd and continued. Your mission in the ancestral land is to collect the sacred color, rheumatism. So, we'll go to the ancestral land to look for that thing. The crowd looked at Aoyi Shigu, and their expressions changed. Their eyes were burning with passion. How could they not know that the sacred color rheumatism was a rare treasure that would be of great help to a martial artist? There were very few things in the world that could affect a martial artist's power of blood. The sacred color rheumatism had an obvious effect on the power of blood. To any martial artist, it was extremely tempting. At the same time, the crowd realized that they were going to the ancestral land to collect the sacred color rheumatism for the ancient sacred clan for free. Then, Aoyi Shigu waved his arm in the air. Countless transparent jade bottles appeared and landed in front of each martial artist. Aoyi Shigu said, "The jade bottles in front of you are called the rheumatism jade bottle. They are used to contain the sacred rheumatism. As long as you collect more than half a bottle of the sacred rheumatism, you will pass the second test." Half a bottle. The crowd was shocked as they stared at the rheumatism jade bottle. The bottle wasn't big, about the size of an ordinary person's thumb. Half a bottle of sacred rheumatism probably only contained a dozen or so drops. As it turned out, he only had to collect a small amount of holy rheumatism to pass the second test. From the looks of it, the second test didn't seem difficult at all. If anyone collects an entire bottle of sacred color rheumatism, we, the Sky Pardon clan, will give him an extra reward, said Aoyin Shigu as he scanned the crowd. Extra reward? What reward? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard about the reward. The reward from the Ancient Saint clan couldn't be too shabby, right? That's all I have to say. Is there anything else you don't understand? Aoyin Shigu did not answer their questions. Instead, he said coldly, Sir, can we take the sacred color rheumatism? As soon as he finished speaking, someone stood up and asked loudly, What do you think? Aoyin Shigu's face darkened. His eyes were like sharp blades that contained a faint murderous intent. That person's expression changed as cold sweat began to form on his forehead. Everyone's expression changed as they realized that the sacred color rheumatism was not something they could enjoy. Listen up, the Sky Pardon clan is monitoring the ancestral land. Anyone who dares to take the sacred color rheumatism secretly or keep the sacred color rheumatism for themselves will only have one ending: death. Aoyin Shigu's expression darkened as he scanned the crowd with a murderous gaze. Everyone was shocked, and no one spoke a word. Under what circumstances can we take the sacred color rheumatism? At this moment, a calm voice was heard. A silver-haired figure stood up and looked at Aoyin Shigu from afar. It was Nie Tian. Aoyin Shigu looked at Nie Tian and said with a dark expression, Under no circumstances can you take the sacred color rheumatism. Because you're not worthy. You're not worthy. The four words were like a clap of thunder, resounding in the ears of everyone present. It was like a heavy slap to everyone's face. It turned out that in the eyes of the ancient sacred clan, everyone present was only a tool for them to collect the sacred color rheumatism. They were not qualified to enjoy the sacred color rheumatism. The ancient sacred clan looked down on the cultivators of the all-heaven sacred world. Even if the people standing before them were the most outstanding geniuses of the all-heaven sacred world. However, after hearing Aoyin Shigu's words, no one objected. Instead, most of them lowered their heads as if they were ashamed of their inferiority. In their hearts, they indeed felt that they were inferior to the ancient sacred clan. So this test is only for us to collect the sacred color rheumatism for the pardoning Sky Clan for free. Nie Tian frowned before he chuckled and said, To put it bluntly, we're just tools. Am I right? Everyone present understood this logic, but no one dared to say it out loud. Yes. Aoyin Shigu responded with a cold expression. His eyes were fixed on Nie Tian as if he was waiting for Nie Tian to embarrass himself. Although it was the truth, the crowd still felt embarrassed when they said it out loud. It was sad that they, who claimed to be geniuses, were reduced to free tools in front of someone stronger. However, Nie Tian remained calm. His expression did not change much, but his lips twitched slightly as he said, Can I have a few more bottles of rheumatism? It seemed like Aoyin Shigu's words did not affect Nie Tian at all. Parting heaven, Seven Bones frowned as he was stunned for a moment. Before he sneered, How many sacred-colored flowing flames do you think you can collect with your strength? I can't say too many, but at least 10 bottles. Nie Tian smiled calmly. 10 bottles. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd around him exclaimed in surprise. Aoyin Shigu had set the standard of passing the test at half a bottle. This meant that collecting sacred rheumatism was not an easy task. Nie Tian had boasted that he could collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism. It was indeed a little arrogant. Brat, have you not woken up yet? Pardon Heaven's Seven Bone chuckled with a look of disdain. I'm very awake. Nie Tian smiled and said, Since you don't believe that I can collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism, why don't we have a bet? Bet? What kind of bet? Aoyin Shigu's eyes narrowed as he sneered. To him, Nie Tian did not have a right to bet with him. However, he also felt that Nie Tian was different from the rest, which was interesting. I believe that I can collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism. Nie Tian said calmly, If I collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism, I'll give them all to you. However, the sacred rheumatism that I collect after that belongs to me. What do you think? Chapter 3970. Do whatever you want of me. Everyone was stunned by his words. They looked at Nyetian as if to say, is this guy out of his mind? Indeed, to everyone, Nyetian's action was extremely unwise. In fact, it was extremely stupid. 10 bottles of holy rheumatism. That was 20 times the amount. How could it be completed so easily? Most importantly, even if Nyetian managed to do it, he would have completely offended Ao Yin Shigu. In other words, he would have offended the entire Pardoning Sky clan and all the ancient sacred clans. It was still unknown if Ao Yin Shigu would allow him to leave the ancient sacred clan's ancestral ground safely. To put one's life in danger in a moment of anger. Wasn't that stupid? Do whatever I want to you. However, at this moment, Parting Heaven's 7 bones let out a cold laugh as he glanced at Nyetian and said coldly, as far as I'm concerned, you're nothing but an ant. You said that I want to do whatever I want to you. At most, I will kill you. Do you think I will kill an ant like you? What do you think? Are you saying that my life is not as valuable as the holy rheumatism? Nyetian's eyes narrowed. He did not expect Ao Yin Shigu to say that. Indeed, in the eyes of Pardon Heaven's 7 bones, his life really wasn't that valuable. What do you think? Ao Yin Shigu's eyes darkened. If you want me to bet with you, you have to show me something that I'm interested in. What about this? Nyetian's eyes darkened. He took a step forward and unleashed a surge of dragon energy. The dragon energy surged around his body like a shield. Ao Yin Shigu's expression changed. He immediately felt that something was amiss. His heart sank, and he exclaimed, this kid's dragon energy is different from ordinary dragon energy. I've never seen such terrifying dragon energy before. Are you interested in my dragon energy? The corner of Nyetian's lips curled up. He smiled and spoke provocatively. From Ao Yin Shigu's reaction, he could tell that the latter had noticed something unusual about his dragon energy. I'll bet with you. Ao Yin Shigu's eyes darkened, and he shouted, if you can't collect 10 bottles of holy color rheumatism, the dragon vein in your body will belong to me. He didn't recognize the chi of the dragon farmer. He just felt that Nyetian's dragon chi was different from the dragon chi of ordinary dragon clan members. It actually made him feel a little threatened. As far as he was concerned, the holy rainbow flowing flame didn't mean much to him. Therefore, he was willing to make the bet. Dragon vein? Could it be that this kid is a member of the dragon clan? When everyone heard Pardon Heaven 7 bones' words, their faces instantly changed, and they were extremely astounded. Even among the dragon clan, only a few people knew about the legend of the dragon farmers. Of course, no one knew about it. Ao Yin Shigu was from the ancient sacred tribe. Not only was he more talented than ordinary people, but he was also more knowledgeable than ordinary people. It wasn't strange that he could tell how powerful the dragon farmer energy was. Great! Nyetian laughed heartily and responded heroically. This time, he was betting his life again. If he lost the 9 dragon veins, he would be almost a cripple. However, he really needed the holy rheumatism. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible to face the intense battle that was about to happen. Everyone else, do you have any questions? Ao Yin Shigu asked cold. He was clearly losing his patience. No one dared to look at him, so no one spoke. All right, let's enter the ancestors' land. Seeing that no one spoke, Ao Yin Shigu took out a holy formation scroll and opened it. Instantly, a powerful space-time force appeared and enveloped everyone. Then, a space-time light pillar appeared on every martial artist's body, like a space-time tunnel. Then, before anyone could react, they disappeared from the formation. Nyetian was in the formation. He felt the space-time aura around him change. Then, he arrived in a completely unfamiliar world. He stood in a forest, surrounded by towering trees. The bigger ones were tens of thousands of meters tall, while the smaller ones were thousands of meters tall. They looked like giants that could reach the sky. Is this the ancestors' land of the ancient sacred tribe? Nyetian squinted and began to sense his surroundings carefully. At that moment, there was no one around him. He was the only one who came here. It seemed that the space-time formation had sent everyone to different locations. Hence, Emo, Jun Jinxing, and the rest were not around Nyetian. The environment here doesn't seem to be any different from the outside world, Nietian mumbled as he sensed his surroundings. He initially thought that the ancestors' land of the ancient sacred tribe would be different. However, apart from the saint power being slightly denser than the outside world, there was no other difference. Then, Nietian made sure that there was nothing out of the ordinary around him, nor did he sense any aura of sacred rheumatism. Then he walked out of the forest. According to Ao Yin Chigu, sacred rheumatism could exist anywhere. It could be in the bodies of sacred beasts, on medicinal herbs, or even on its own. They could stay in the ancestors' land of the ancient sacred tribe for a month. Hence, he had to collect at least 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism within a month. After walking out of the forest, Nietian came to a valley. Let's take a look at this valley. Who knows, there might be sacred rheumatism. He glanced at the valley and dashed in without hesitation. After entering the valley, Nietian realized that the valley was much bigger than he had imagined. Moreover, it was very spacious. Apart from some random boulders, there was nothing else. Seems like I'm out of luck. He scanned the valley quickly and did not sense any aura of sacred rheumatism. He could only smile bitterly. However, he was not disheartened. After all, he had just arrived. Everything had just begun. He did not stop. He left the valley immediately and was ready to search elsewhere. He was very fast and left the valley. In the blink of an eye, he was 10,000 meters away. Roar! However, at that moment, a deep roar was heard. It came from the valley behind him. That's strange. Nietian frowned and was confused. He did not sense any aura in the valley earlier. Why would there be a roar? It was strange. In the next moment, his expression changed and his eyes shone with excitement. He suddenly felt that his bloodline power was unusually active. He had sensed the aura of sacred rheumatism. Chapter 3971. Nietian felt the activation of the power of the bloodline, and he became excited. His eyes were shining brightly. He was extremely fast, and he came out of the valley directly. Suddenly, the bloodline in his body was in a frenzy. Roar! At this time, a low roar sounded again. It was very violent and majestic. Looks like a big guy. Nietian's mouth twitched. There was no fear in his eyes. Instead, he was even more excited. Boom! Just as he finished speaking, a powerful and violent suppressive force appeared, pressing down on him like a mountain, causing his expression to change involuntarily. Bang! In the next moment, the clear sky sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed out wildly. Wherever the shadow of the sword fell, it resisted the enormous pressure. There was a loud rumble in the void, and wild waves burst out, forcing him to retreat again and again. What a violent force! Nietian steadied himself. His eyes trembled slightly, and he could not help but exclaim. He had activated the soul of the sky just now, which was enough to kill a Tiani 5th-tier great sage. However, the power in the void actually forced him to retreat. Roar! At this time, a low roar sounded, and then a huge figure appeared. It was like a small mountain, and it suddenly descended, causing the surrounding void to sink. Nietian's eyes darkened slightly. He was shocked when he saw the huge beast in front of him. The huge beast was not big. It was only 100 meters in size, and it looked like a huge wolf. However, its tusks were extremely protruding, and they were exposed outside its mouth, like a wild boar. On its back, there was a row of flesh protruding out. It looked extremely hard, as if it was made of steel. The strangest thing was that the huge beast was surrounded by a black aura. It seemed to be some kind of terrifying bloodline power. Nietian sensed a hint of danger from the black chi. Roar! At this moment, the giant beast's eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. It stared at Nietian and let out a deep roar. Its 2 fangs were actually covered in saliva, as if it had seen an incomparably delicious prey. It seems that not only am I interested in you, but you're also interested in me. Nietian's lips twitched, and he smiled cold. Come on, roar. The huge beast seemed to understand Nietian's words. It roared to the sky, and suddenly the black aura around its body thickened. Then it moved at an extremely fast speed and it charged straight at Nyetian. Good. Nyetian's eyes slightly darkened, and he seemed to be very excited. The clear sky sword pierced straight out, and the sword's shadow roared like a dragon as it rumbled towards the huge beast. But the next moment, the huge beast shattered the sword shadow, and it charged straight at Nyetian. Nyetian's eyes could not help but tremble, and his expression changed. He did not expect the huge beast to be so terrifying and its body to be so strong. His reaction was extremely fast. The wings behind him flapped, and he instantly moved dozens of meters to the side, avoiding the huge beast's frontal attack. But he was still a step too slow. The moment the huge beast's figure rushed over, a terrible wound appeared on his chest. Blood gushed out and directly dyed his body red. What a powerful beast! Nyetian steadied his body, and his eyes darkened. He could sense that the huge beast's body was not too strong, but the black aura around its body was very terrifying. Without the black aura, the huge beast could not break his sword shadow at all. Roar! At this moment, the breath of Nyetian's blood made the huge beast even more violent. Its eyes were bloodshot, and it roared and once again rushed towards Nyetian. This time, Nyetian did not dare to be careless. He suddenly stomped his feet, and his figure rushed into the sky. Then he swept out with his long sword, and the sword's shadow poured down like a waterfall, and it was as powerful as a mountain, pressing down on the huge beast. Bang! There was a muffled sound in the void. After the sword's shadow fell, it didn't hurt the giant beast at all. Instead, it directly collapsed. Nyetian was forced to retreat again, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. The black aura around the huge beast body was like some kind of formation, and it was very powerful, so the huge beast was not afraid of his attack at all. Then, the huge beast rushed again, and Nyetian could not avoid it every time. But he still could not hurt the huge beast even after a few consecutive attacks. How can this beast be so strong? Nyetian steadied his body, and he could not help but feel puzzled. If this continued, he would not be able to kill the huge beast, and, on the contrary, the huge beast would have a chance to kill him. Don't tell me I have to use my forbidden astral soul against this beast. Nyetian frowned. His countenance was extremely ugly to behold. If he had to use his forbidden astral soul against such an opponent, then he would be too weak. Nyetian carefully observed the flow of the black aura. At this moment, the fat cat's voice rang out, reminding Nyetian. Nyetian's gaze froze, and the way he looked at the huge beast changed. After which, he finally saw something unusual. So it turned out that the black aura was actually flowing out from the huge beast's eyes. The weakness of his huge beast is its eyes. Nyetian's gaze trembled, and he could not help but feel excited. Let's give it a try. The fat cat did not dare to confirm, and could only reply in a low voice. Okay. Nyetian nodded his head and laughed out loud, provoking the beast. Little beast, come and kill me. Roar. The huge beast was instantly enraged by the provocation. The black aura around its body surged wildly, and its pair of eyes became even more violent and evil. Its huge body was like an arrow that was released from a bow, and it directly shot towards Nyetian. The corner of Nyetian's mouth twitched. This time, he did not dodge, but directly rushed towards it. Just when he was about 100 meters away from the huge beast, he suddenly struck with his sword. The moment the sword's shadow spurted out, the void trembled for a moment. Puff! In the next moment, where the sword shadow landed, there was a dripping blood, and one of the huge beast's eyes directly exploded. Aowu! The enormous beast howled as sharp pain assaulted it, and then its body suddenly froze in midair. Die! Seeing this, Nyetian let out a low roar and slashed out with his sword. The sword's shadow suddenly descended, leaving behind a waterfall of blood in the air. The huge beast was killed by his sword. Nyetian steadied his body, and his eyes trembled slightly. That moment just now seemed easy, but in reality, it was extremely dangerous. If he did not destroy the huge beast's eyes, he would be the one who was seriously injured. He had guessed correctly. The eyes were the huge beast's weakness. Chapter 3972. Sacred Rheumatism. Nyetian could not help but exclaim when he saw the sacred rheumatism. There was indeed sacred rheumatism in the giant beast's body. However, the amount of holy rainbow flowing flame before him was pitifully small. There was only a single drop of it. One drop, just one drop. Nyetian moved and extended his palm to hold the sacred rheumatism. He could not hide the passion in his eyes. Although it was only a single drop of holy rainbow flowing flame, it was enough to make his bloodline power restless. His entire body felt like it was boiling, and his blood felt like it was boiling. Sacred rheumatism is good stuff indeed. Nyetian became cold and mumbled to himself. He was even thinking about consuming a drop of the holy color flowing flame to see what kind of changes it would bring to his martial physique. However, the thought only lasted for a second before he dismissed it. He was not worried that someone was watching him, but he had made a deal with Aoyan Shigu that the sacred rheumatism he collected after collecting 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism would belong to him. The sacred rheumatism was good stuff, but it was not good enough for him to break his promise. Nyetian smiled and took out the jade bottle of rheumatism to store the sacred rheumatism. I'll have to kill at least 10 of these giant beasts to fill this bottle. He looked at the jade bottle of rheumatism in his hand and smiled bitterly. It was only one drop of sacred rheumatism, but it made the jade bottle of rheumatism look empty. Nyetian had almost risked his life to kill the giant beast earlier. It would not be easy for him to kill more than 10 of them. Most importantly, he had to collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism. I'll be busy from now on. Nyetian put away the jade bottle of rheumatism and smiled bitterly. Then, still feeling a little uneasy, he turned around and returned to the valley. After thoroughly sensing the surroundings and confirming that there were no more auras, he left. Next, Nyetian started to expand in all directions. Bit by bit, the ordinary holy color rheumatism. He was completely unfamiliar with the sacred ancestral grounds, so he was like a headless fly, running around aimlessly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Nyetian's figure appeared in a valley. He looked very tired. Over the past 3 days, he had sensed many places, but there was no sign of holy color rheumatism. Only now did he realize how lucky he was to have encountered that giant beast. We can't keep searching like this. In the valley, Nyetian frowned. His expression was ugly. 3 days of uninterrupted practice had consumed a large amount of his spiritual power, making him very tired. Most importantly, he had gained nothing. He only had a month's time. If he continued to search like this, he would definitely not be able to collect 10 bottles of holy color rheumatism. If he wanted to complete the bet between him and Aoyan Shigu, he had to find another way. Nyetian, instead of looking for holy color rheumatism, why don't you let holy color rheumatism come to you? At that moment, Fat Cat's voice was heard and it laughed strangely. What do you mean? Nyetian was getting anxious, so he did not understand Fat Cat's words. I think that the holy beast here should be interested in holy color rheumatism. Why don't you take out the drop of holy color rheumatism that you just collected as bait and let the holy beast come to you? Fat Cat nodded and said in a deep voice, "That's a good idea." Nyetian's eyes flickered slightly as he was overjoyed. The aura of holy color rheumatism was very strong. If he took it out, it would definitely attract many holy beasts. However, the problem was that if holy color rheumatism attracted too many holy beasts, Nyetian would definitely not be able to handle them on his own. By then, he would not be luring the snake out of its hole, but the wolf into the house. Moreover, Nyetian could not guarantee that the holy beasts that were attracted by holy color rheumatism would also have holy color rheumatism in their bodies. This idea still won't work. After thinking about it, Nyetian still felt that this idea was too dangerous. He would not use it unless he had no other choice. This is going to be troublesome. Fat Cat frowned and could not help but sigh. Indeed, it would be difficult for Nyetian to collect 10 bottles of holy color rheumatism. Let's recover my spiritual power first. Nyetian frowned, but he could not think too much. He could only let himself recover first before looking for it slowly. He rested for about half an hour in the valley and waited for his mental strength to recover. Then he stood up and left right away. Then Nietion decided to look in a direction. He did not believe that he could not find holy color rheumatism. Half a day later, he appeared on a giant tree. He suddenly sensed something, and his eyes lit up. Then his expression changed. At that moment, he sensed the aura of holy color rheumatism. That's right, it's holy color rheumatism. Nietion confirmed the aura. It was like a person who had been starving for a few days seeing a table of delicacies. His eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he moved and flew toward the aura of holy color rheumatism. A moment later, he came to a stream and saw a martial artist standing there from afar. A drop of holy color rheumatism was floating in front of him. That cultivator looked very nervous, his eyes shining with a bright light, obviously very eager. In the next moment, something shocking happened. The martial artist took a step forward, opened his mouth, and swallowed the drop of holy color rheumatism. Nietion's expression suddenly changed, and he was extremely shocked when he saw this scene. He did not expect the martial artist to have the guts to swallow the drop of holy color rheumatism. Ao Yinshigu had warned many times that no one should have any ideas about holy color rheumatism. However, there were still people who could not resist the temptation and took the drop of holy color rheumatism. Boom! At this moment, a towering aura burst forth from the body of that cultivator. After that, a surge of bloodline aura gushed forth, surging and boundless, extremely powerful. What a terrifying holy color rheumatism. Nietion was shocked when he saw that. Just one drop of holy color rheumatism caused the martial artist's bloodline power to skyrocket. However, right at that moment, Nietion suddenly sensed a peculiar aura. His expression flickered as he was taken aback. You're just an ant. Do you think you can enjoy holy color rheumatism? In the next moment, a low, furious voice was heard. Then, a giant palm shadow fell from the void and pressed toward the martial artist like a mountain. Bang! Before the warrior could even react, his blood exploded and he died. The bloody scene caused Nietion's eyes to tremble and his expression to stiffen. Then, a martial artist in black landed with a drop of holy color rheumatism floating in his palm. It was the drop that the martial artist had just consumed. Without a doubt, this martial artist in black was from the Pardon Sky clan, the custodian of holy color rheumatism. The custodian killed the martial artist who had secretly consumed holy color rheumatism. However, his face was still dark, and his murderous intent grew stronger. In the blink of an eye, he spun around and glared in Nietion's direction as he growled, "Get the hell out, you ant!" Nietion frowned, and his expression darkened again. However, he was not afraid and stood out. Chapter 3973. What an intense, murderous aura. You want to kill me? Nietion frowned as he felt the intense, murderous aura from the supervisor. His face was dark and shocked. He didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't understand why the supervisor wanted to kill him. And the supervisor's eyes were dark and cold. You deserve to die. Nietion's eyes narrowed as he was shocked. He didn't understand why he deserved to die. Boom. However, right at this moment, the custodian's figure suddenly moved. Like a streak of light, he charged towards Nietion with murderous intent. His body was extremely fast as he drew a sharp arc in the air. It was as if he was going to tear the space apart. Cold. In an instant, Nietion felt a bone-chilling coldness that made his heart shudder. But his reaction was fast. The sword in the sky appeared in his hand, and he slashed in the air. Instantly, the sword radiance was blinding. Pung! In the next moment, a muffled sound was heard. Nietion retreated a few hundred meters before he managed to stabilize himself. However, there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, the protector of Heaven's pardon stood coldly in midair while his eyes surged with surprise and shock instead of delight. He had never expected that Nietion would actually be able to block his deadly strike. You're an interesting ant. The supervisor's eyes trembled as he spoke cold. The murderous aura around him intensified. Nietion's strength had exceeded his expectations, but it was only a surprise. It couldn't change Nietion's fate of death. You're also very interesting. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly as a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Actually, the supervisor wasn't strong. He was only at level 5 of the Heavenly Justice Realm, but his combat strength far exceeded warriors of the same level. He was even stronger than most of the low-leveled Heaven Tribulation Kings. Fat Cat had said before that the strength of the ancient holy tribe was not something that Nietion could imagine. From this custodian, Nietion could be considered to have experienced the strength of the ancient sacred clan. This custodian should only be an ordinary cultivator in the ancient sacred clan, but from his battle prowess, he was comparable to the peak geniuses of the All Saints world. On the other hand, Aoyin Shigu was a super genius of the Pardon Sky clan and had the cultivation of a Heavenly Justice 9th tier great sage. His battle prowess was probably close to that of a peak Heavenly Tribulation great sage. No wonder when Fat Cat saw Aoyin Shigu, she felt that Nietion's Wukuei this time was a little uncertain. Really? The Overseer of Pardoning Heaven could sense the provocation in Nietion's eyes, causing him to burn with rage. Being provoked by an ant was a humiliation to him. Die! In midair, the Overseer of Pardoning Heaven roared and slammed his palm down. A wave of light appeared like a sharp blade, and the sharpness of the air could actually tear the void. Instantly, a monstrous, murderous aura enveloped Nietion. This guy is really strong. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and his face was incomparably gloomy. Sword intent surged all over his body, and he slashed out with his sword. The sword force was like a mountain, majestic and forceful, suppressing everything. Boom! In the next instant, a violent explosion sounded in the void, and the Overseer of Pardoning Heaven was actually forced to retreat. Although he finally stabilized his body, he was in a very sorry state. Obviously, he did not expect the power of Nietion's sword to be so terrifying. He was a Heavenly Justice 5th tier great sage, and his battle prowess was equivalent to that of a low-level Heavenly Tribulation great sage. And Nietion was only a Heavenly Justice 1st tier great sage. How could he suppress him? The Overseer stabilized his body and stared at Nietion in shock and reprimanded coldly. Brat, why is your sword intent so strong? Is it very strong? Tianling sneered, and with a look of disdain, he said, You're just too weak. In fact, his sword Dao realm was not very strong, and he was only at the 1st heaven of Oracle. Compared to his martial Dao cultivation, he was a whole realm lower. However, his sword intent quality was too high, which made the power of his sword intent far surpass swordsmen of the same level. Presumptuous. The Overseer of Pardoning Heaven's expression froze, and his body was filled with anger. Even his eyes became bloodshot. This was the first time he was looked down upon by a martial artist from the outside world. You're from the Pardoning Heaven clan, right? You're in charge of monitoring us to see if we've secretly taken the holy rainbow rheumatism, right? Nietion asked coldly, showing no fear in the face of the enraged Overseer of Pardoning Heaven. Brat, you know my identity, yet you still dare to act so insolently in front of me. You're courting death. The Overseer of Pardoning Heaven's expression was gloomy, and his murderous intent was heavy. So you're from the Pardoning Heaven clan. Nietion smiled faintly and asked calmly, I want to know, it's fine if you killed the person who secretly took the holy rainbow rheumatism, but why do you want to kill me? You saw him taking the holy rainbow rheumatism, but you didn't stop him. You deserve to die. The Overseer of Pardoning Heaven's expression was gloomy and cold. Oh, so this is the reason why you want to kill me. Nietion's eyes darkened slightly, and the corner of his lips pulled into a cold arc as he looked at the Overseer of Pardoning Heaven with a playful expression. At that moment, the Overseer of Pardoning Heaven's expression changed, and he said in a deep voice, You little ant, your strength is stronger than I imagined. If you apologize to me now, I can spare your life. What if I don't apologize? The corner of Nietion's mouth twitched, and he said, You still want to kill me? Can you? You dare to provoke me. The overseer of pardoning heaven clearly didn't think that Nyetian would dare to put on such an attitude. With a low roar, the killing intent that he had just restrained erupted once again. He felt that Nyetian was a difficult opponent, and he didn't want to waste too much time. So he let Nyetian go. But who would have thought that Nyetian didn't know what was good for him, and didn't even want to admit his mistake? This undoubtedly touched his bottom line, and it ignited his killing intent once again. So what if I provoke you? Nye Tianling sneered, and the sword intent around his body surged wildly. A sharp aura filled the surrounding space, and he said in a deep voice, "I still want to kill you. Kill me?" The overseer of pardoning heaven felt Nye Tian's killing intent, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble, as if he couldn't believe that this outsider in front of him had really revealed killing intent. That person called Ao Yin Shigu said that we are not allowed to touch the sacred rheumatism, but he didn't say that we are not allowed to touch the overseer. Nye Tianling sneered, and the killing intent in his eyes instantly intensified. He felt that there should be many people who secretly took the sacred rheumatism. So the sacred rheumatism on the overseer of pardoning heaven should be quite significant. Chapter 30-974. Brat, you really want to kill me? The supervisor of pardoning heaven could feel the murderous intent radiating from Yetian. His eyes couldn't help but tremble in fear. Not even in his dreams did he imagine that a cultivator from the outside world would want to kill him, a member of the pardoning heaven clan. In the eyes of the supervisor of pardoning heaven, people like us who enter the ancestral land are all little pigs, right? Nye Tianling sneered. I want you to have a taste of what it's like to be treated as a little pig. You. The supervisor's eyes trembled, unable to believe the scene before him. He, the supervisor, had become a little pig in the eyes of the supervisor. He couldn't accept this sudden change in status. Come on, show me all of your strength. Let me see just how strong you ancient holy clans are. Nye Tian sneered, his eyes filled with evil and murderous intent. Sword intent surged from his body like a storm, causing the surrounding space to rumble. You're courting death. The eyes of the overseer of pardoning heaven trembled. In the end, the violent rage caused him to become irritable. With a loud roar, his aura erupted like a volcano. Boom! Instantly, the void trembled. The billowing aura caused the surrounding space to tremble. Nyetian's eyes narrowed as he sneered. It seems that I've underestimated your strength. Indeed, the overseer's aura was much stronger than before, which was beyond Nyetian's expectations. Mere ant-eye. At this moment, the supervisor roared. His aura was like thunder as he slammed his palm forward. The palm was like a mountain, rumbling out, causing the void to tremble as it pressed down on Nyetian. At this moment, Nyetian felt a terrifying suppressive force above his head, causing his expression to change. Sacred heaven-defying sword. Heavenly sword reverses the sun. In an instant, Nyetian let out a low roar. His sword intent soared into the sky. The sword shadow was like a dragon breaking out of the abyss, forcefully shattering the overwhelming palm. Bang! After that, a muffled bang resounded. The overseer's figure shook in midair, and then he was blasted flying while leaving a trail of blood behind him. How is this possible? The overseer of pardoning heaven steadied himself, his eyes trembling with extreme shock. He could not imagine that Nyetian could actually defeat him with a single sword. If the people of the pardoning heaven clan only have this much strength, it would be too disappointing. Nyetian's lips curled upward in a cold grin. "Aunt, you asked for it." The overseer's expression changed. His body trembled as a terrifying blood-red energy gushed out, circulating endlessly in the air like a scarlet wave. Bloodline power. Nyetian's expression changed as he sensed the powerful bloodline aura. Under his coercion, the custodian of pardoning heaven actually used the power of his bloodline. "Aunt, this is the power of our pardoning heaven clan's bloodline. The blood of pardoning heaven." The custodian of pardoning heaven laughed maniacally as the blood-red energy around him exploded. Like a giant crimson snake, it slithered in the air. The blood of pardoning heaven. Nietion's eyes narrowed as his expression changed. Up until now, out of all the bloodlines he had seen, other than Rui Qinyu's 10 Annihilation Evil Woman, no other bloodline could go against the blood of pardoning heaven. The pardoning heaven clan was indeed one of the 4 ancient sacred clans. The power of their bloodline was unparalleled. It was obvious that this custodian did not have a high status in the pardoning heaven clan. His bloodline power was mediocre as well. Otherwise, he would not have fallen to the level of a custodian. Even the blood of pardoning heaven displayed such power on him. From this, one could see how terrifying this bloodline power was. "Aunt, you should feel honored to die under the blood of pardoning heaven." At this moment, the overseer of pardoning heaven laughed maniacally as a cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. After that, his silhouette moved as waves of blood gushed forth violently in the air, resembling gigantic snakes that wanted to devour everything. Nietion's eyes grew grim as he saw the sky turn incomparably dark under the illumination of the heaven-parting blood net. A bloody, murderous aura filled the entire area, and the air seemed to have become misty, as if it were about to ignite. "The blood of pardoning heaven is indeed powerful," he exclaimed in his heart. Raising the sword in the sky, his sword intent gushed out like a hurricane as he slashed out. Boom! Chi-chi-chi! Just as the sword's shadow descended and came into contact with the waves of blood-red energy, a shocking scene occurred. The sword's shadow was like a clay ox falling into the sea. It was directly devoured. "Huh?" Nietion's expression changed as he exclaimed in shock and retreated. However, he was still a step too late. In the air, the blood of pardoning heaven gushed over like raging waves, its billowing aura engulfing everything. Nietion's silhouette was instantly devoured, vanishing without a trace. Chi-chi-chi. Amidst the billowing waves, Nietion forcefully activated the astral soul shield, preventing the blood-red energy from invading his body. However, the surrounding blood-red energy was like maggots in one's bones, penetrating through the astral soul shield. "Damn it!" Nietion's expression flickered as he cried out in alarm. At this moment, the blood-red energy was like a sharp blade, leaving behind numerous bloody wounds on his body, instantly turning him into a man of blood. In an instant, Nietion felt as though thousands of ants were devouring his body. His entire body was about to be torn apart in an instant. The power of the blood of pardoning heaven is so terrifying. His eyes trembled as he tried to circulate the dragon veins to expel the blood-red energy from his body. However, at that moment, the little fat cat let out a cry of astonishment. Nietion's god-devil body. Bang! Nietion's expression changed. Without the slightest hesitation, the fiend god origin embryo rumbled, and the fiend god energy shot into the sky. Strands of dark and terrifying energy charged out forcefully forcing the blood-red energy out of his body. At the instant the blood-red energy was forced out, Nietion instantly felt much more comfortable. "Nietion, charge out!" Meanwhile, Fat Cat shouted loudly once more, and he actually seemed to be extremely flustered. "All right," Nietion replied. Instantly, the fiend god energy surged out violently, and it instantly condensed into an enormous dragon that forcefully charged through the layers of blood-red energy. In the blink of an eye, Nietion charged out of the encirclement of the blood of pardoning heaven, but his entire body was drenched in blood. He stood there as if he'd been skinned, and he looked extremely bloody. That was close. Nietion looked at his badly mutilated hands in shock. Fortunately, he had activated the fiend god physique in time. Otherwise, the blood-red energy might have directly devoured him into a pool of blood. The blood of pardoning heaven contained extremely terrifying devouring energy, and even the astral soul shield was unable to withstand it. He's not dead. High up in the sky, the overseer of pardoning heaven's eyes trembled when he saw Nietion charging out. He couldn't believe that Nyetian was actually able to charge out alive after being surrounded by the blood of pardoning heaven. Chapter 3975. Nye Tianling stood high up in the sky, his cold eyes locked onto the heaven's pardon overseer. Boom! Outside his body, the power of the fiend gods was monstrous, roiling and whistling, rumbling unceasingly. How is your bloodline power so strong? The heaven's pardon overseer felt the aura of Nyetian's bloodline, and his eyes quivered in shock. At this moment, he knew that Nyetian had used his powerful bloodline power to break through the encirclement of the heaven's pardon overseer. He did not expect Nyetian's bloodline power to be so strong that he was not afraid of the heaven's pardon overseer's power. What's the point of a dying man knowing so much? Nyetian's face was cold and murderous. The godly demon force in his body went berserk, and dark aura filled the space within a few 100,000 meters. It was extremely terrifying. The heaven's pardon overseer's expression froze, and he was speechless. He sensed a strong threat from the power of the fiend gods. It was as if Nyetian's bloodline power was even more terrifying than his. But how was this possible? He was from the ancient sacred clan, while Nyetian was just an ant from the outside world. How could his bloodline be stronger than his? Boom! Just as he was puzzling over this, Nyetian's figure moved and his sword slashed towards him. The mighty sword will combined with the godly demon force, and a dark sword shadow appeared. Like a giant black beast, it slammed down. Bang! The overseer's eyes trembled as he hurriedly responded by sending out a palm strike. Palm and sword collided in midair, causing a deafening boom to ring out. The violent energy from the collision was like a raging tsunami that spread out in all directions. The heaven's pardon overseer retreated frantically, and he was forced back thousands of meters. When he stabilized himself, his body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood before he could speak. His face turned pale like a sheet of paper. Humph. Nyetian took a step forward and sneered. Ancient sacred clan is just SOSO. As soon as he finished speaking, he moved like lightning, and the sword ray whizzed through the air like a shooting star, attacking the heaven's pardon overseer. Bang! The overseer of pardon heaven hadn't even stabilized his footing when he was heavily injured once more, and he was blasted flying while leaving behind a trail of blood in the air. With just 2 sword strikes, Nyetian had rendered the pardonable heaven overseer powerless to retaliate. Brat, do you really want to kill me? The face of the parting heaven overseer paled, and his eyes trembled. Clearly, he was extremely afraid. I'm a member of the parting heaven clan. If you kill me, you will definitely not be able to leave this place alive. Threatening me? Nyetian's face was filled with killing intent. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile as he said in a deep voice, "You didn't have this kind of attitude when you wanted to kill me just now." As he spoke, he walked over, and with every step he took, the killing intent on his body grew sharper. Sensing the chilling, killing intent, the overseer of pardoning heaven felt a suffocating pressure, rendering him speechless. He really did not expect that Nyetian actually dared to kill him. Do you have any last words? Tianling smiled coldly. Brat, you better think this through. If you dare to touch a member of the pardonable heaven clan, you will also die. The overseer's eyes trembled, and the fear in his heart was perfectly written on his face. At this moment, the corner of Nyetian's mouth curled up into a cold smile as he asked, "I'd like to know how you saw someone secretly consuming the holy color flowing flames." The detection of the formation. It was the detection of the formation. The overseer was overjoyed when he saw that Nyetian's killing intent had weakened significantly. We have a formation that monitors the entire ancestral land. When you all enter the ancestral land, the formation will record the aura of your divine sense. It can project the image within 100 meters of you. So that's how it is. Nyetian's lips curled into a strange smile. His eyes became extremely gloomy, as if he was thinking about something. As it turned out, they were being monitored as soon as they entered the ancestral land. Nyetian's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, You were able to teleport here because of that grand spell formation, right? Yes. The overseer nodded and said, the formation can instantly transport us to any place in the ancestral land. Nyetian frowned, then laughed and said, I want to kill you now, but I don't see any other overseer appearing. Have they given up on you? The overseer's expression suddenly changed and became extremely ugly. He was also very confused as to why no other overseer had appeared until now. The most likely reason was that there were too many people secretly consuming holy color rheumatism, and there weren't enough overseers. Friend, I've already told you so much. You should also know that if you kill me, my companions will not let you go. The overseer looked at Nyetian and said, Why don't you let me go, and we'll pretend that nothing just happened? Is that so? Nyetian laughed. Then his expression suddenly darkened. He released a strange aura from his body and said, What about now? Can your companions still find me? How is this possible? The overseer suddenly sensed something, and his expression changed drastically. How can you change the aura of your soul? He couldn't believe that Nyetian had actually changed the aura of his soul. Every martial artist's divine soul aura was unique, so the divine soul mark was the mark of a martial artist. And Nyetian had actually changed the aura of his soul. I'm sorry, you won't have the chance to know the answer. Nyetian smiled coldly. Then he moved, and a streak of sword light whizzed out and flashed across the air in a flash. In the next moment, before the overseer could understand what was going on, his head fell to the ground. Nyetian had used the most direct method to kill him, decapitation. A cultivator from the ancient sacred clan is only SOSO. Nyetian looked at the corpse on the ground, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Since the opponents saw him as an ant, why should he care about his life? This battle was beneficial to Nyetian. Now that he knew the bloodline power of the Pardoning Sky clan, it would be very helpful when he fought against Aoyan Chigu in the future. Although he still didn't know if Aoyan Chigu would continue to participate in the test, he had to be prepared for the worst and treat Aoyan Chigu as an opponent. At the same time, he also knew how the Pardoning Sky clan was monitoring them. Actually, he didn't change the aura of his soul. The aura of his soul was unique to cultivators and couldn't be changed. He only asked the Eternal Night Fox to conceal his soul so that the Pardoning Sky clan could no longer monitor him. Already, he didn't want to be monitored while he was collecting holy color rheumatism. Chapter 3976. Half a bottle of sacred rheumatism. Not bad. Nyetian smiled and reached out his hand. Half a bottle of sacred rheumatism appeared in his palm. He did not expect this custodian of pardoning heaven to possess so much sacred rheumatism. Half a bottle of sacred rheumatism contained around 7 to 8 drops. It seemed like this guy had killed quite a number of people. At the same time, it was obvious that there were many opportunists among the participants who could not resist the temptation of sacred rheumatism. Meanwhile, in a secluded valley in the ancient sacred ancestral grounds, a huge formation stood erect, covering almost the entire valley. Images were floating in the middle of the formation, showing the cultivators who were taking part in the trial. Currently, in the sky above the formation, more than 10 figures were staring coldly at the formation. Their eyes were focused on a certain image. A silver-haired cultivator was holding half a bottle of sacred rheumatism and smiling happily. This silver-haired cultivator was none other than Nyetian. Although Nyetian had concealed the aura of his divine spirit, his image was still transmitted to the formation. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! At that moment, a burly middle-aged man let out a roar. His aura surged violently like a volcano, about to erupt in the next instant. He was the person in charge of the sacred rheumatism gathering this time. His name was Shi Tianluan. Shi Tianluan did not expect someone to kill a member of the Pardoning Heaven tribe. Disgrace. This is a disgrace to our Pardoning Heaven tribe. An ant from another race dares to kill a member of our Pardoning Heaven tribe? He's provoking our Pardoning Heaven tribe. Another member of the Pardoning Heaven tribe roared with a terrifying aura. Sir, let me kill this kid. A plump cultivator stepped forward and said to Shi Tianluan, "His divine soul aura has been concealed. The Grand Array can't lock onto his position, so we can't teleport him," Xie Tianluan said coldly with a grim expression. Previously, due to the lack of manpower, he did not send anyone to save the custodian. Most importantly, he did not believe that an outsider would dare to kill someone from the Pardoning Sky clan in the sacred ancestral ground. But Nie Tian had actually killed that custodian. This was something he had never expected at all. Now, it was impossible for him to send someone to kill Nie Tian. Nie Tian's divine soul aura was covered by another divine soul aura. Although the array could still capture his image, it couldn't pinpoint his location, so it couldn't teleport him. In other words, if they wanted to kill Nie Tian for revenge, they had to conduct a large-scale search in the ancestors' land. But if that was the case, it would consume too much manpower. Originally, there were only about 100 guardians. Now that most of them have been sent out, there was basically no hope of capturing Nie Tian. "My lord, don't tell me we're just going to watch this ant continue to live." The fat martial artist was clearly furious as he roared. "Don't worry, he won't live for long." Shi Tianluan's eyes were incomparably cold. She stared at Nie Tian and said, "When the Sacred Color Rheumatism collection is over, I will definitely kill him with my own hands. That's the only way." The others frowned and could only nod in agreement. No matter how much they wanted to kill Nie Tian, there was no other way. They could only wait until the Sacred Color Rheumatism collection was over. "Aunt, if I don't kill you, my name isn't Shi Tianluan." Shi Tianluan looked at Nie Tian and roared madly in her heart. Ancient sacred ancestral ground. In a dense forest, a figure was traversing at an extremely fast speed. It was Nie Tian. After killing that custodian and obtaining half a bottle of Sacred Color Rheumatism, Nie Tian was in a good mood. The other custodians didn't appear. "It seems like they can no longer monitor me." Nie Tian was finally relieved when he saw that no one from the Pardoning Sky clan came. He didn't know that his every move was still under the surveillance of the Pardoning Sky clan. "Nie Tian, half a bottle of Sacred Color Rheumatism isn't enough to solve your current situation. You have to think of a solution as soon as possible. Otherwise, it'll be too late." At this moment, Fat Cat's voice sounded. Nie Tian nodded with a helpless expression. Indeed, half a bottle of Sacred Color Rheumatism was too little for him. What he needed was at least 10 bottles of Sacred Color Rheumatism. It had already been a few days, but he still couldn't think of a way to find Sacred Color Rheumatism as soon as possible. If this continued, he was afraid that he would lose the bet with Yin Shigu. "Why don't I let the little demon fox try?" At this moment, Nie Tian's gaze suddenly froze, and a strange color flashed across his eyes. The Eternal Night Demon Fox's mental strength was extremely terrifying. Perhaps it would have a good effect if it were to sense Sacred Color Rheumatism. Nie Tian took out a drop of Sacred Color Rheumatism and tried to let the Eternal Night Demon Fox sense it. However, the little demon fox shook its head, as if it didn't want to sense the aura. Nie Tian frowned, looking confused. Could it be that the Eternal Night Demon Fox didn't like the aura of Sacred Color Rheumatism? Forget it. After half a day, the Eternal Night Demon Fox kept rejecting it. Nie Tian could only give up and think of another way. Following that, Nie Tian thought for a long time, but he still couldn't think of a good idea. He could only use the stupidest method, which was to use his own senses to slowly search for it. Very soon, a few days passed. Nie Tian was very unlucky. Apart from collecting a drop of Sacred Color Rheumatism from a red flower, he didn't find anything else. So it's so difficult to collect Sacred Color Rheumatism. No wonder Yin Shigu set the rule that only half a day of Sacred Color Rheumatism can pass the test. At this moment, Nie Tian finally understood why Yin Shigu made a bet with him. If this went on, he would definitely lose the bet. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly sensed a familiar aura. His expression changed and he exclaimed, "It's him! Nie Tian, I finally found you." After a while, a figure appeared, looking at Nie Tian in surprise and excitement. Mori Shire. Nie Tian looked at the face in front of him and frowned. The person who appeared in front of him was Mori Shire. Nyetian didn't expect this guy to suddenly appear. "Aunt, you deserve to die." At this moment, a low, murderous voice suddenly sounded. Following that, a majestic pressure appeared, and a black figure appeared in midair. His whole body was filled with killing intent, and his eyes were like sharp blades. Cold, he stared at Nyetian. "Custodian." Nyetian looked at that person, and his expression changed slightly as he exclaimed. Immediately, he understood that this custodian had found him through Mori Shire. "Custodian?" Mori Shire looked at the black martial artist, frowned, and said in surprise, "He's from the Pardoning Sky clan." Chapter 39:77. Bang! The overseer of Pardoning Heaven stood coldly in the sky, unleashing his aura. His face was incomparably dark, while his eyes were filled with murderous intent, like sharp blades that could kill. He glared at Nyetian and Mori Shire. Such a terrifying bloodline force. Mori Shire stared at the overseer of Pardoning Heaven, and his eyes shuddered in astonishment. It was his first time witnessing the bloodline force of the ancient sacred tribe. It was incomparable to ordinary bloodlines. "Aunt, you dare to kill the people of our Pardoning Heaven clan? You're courting death." The overseer's eyes turned cold as he spoke, each word filled with terrifying murderous intent. It was precisely through Apocalypse 12 that he had instantly arrived here. His purpose for coming here was very simple: to kill Nyetian. Mori Shire frowned his eyebrows and glanced at Nyetian in astonishment. He did not expect Nyetian to kill the people of the Pardoning Heaven clan. Killing the people of the Pardoning Heaven clan in the ancient sacred ancestral grounds. Was Nyetian insane? Mori Shire, they followed the aura of your soul. Nyetian wore a dark expression as he spoke to Mori Shire. "I see." Mori Shire's eyes narrowed as he immediately came to a realization. Following this, a surge of energy surged from his body, concealing the aura of his soul. Nyetian frowned slightly when he sensed the change in Mori Shire's aura, but he was not too surprised. Mori Shire was a mysterious man, thus it was not strange for him to have such an ability. "Two ants. Do you think you can escape death by concealing the aura of your soul? What a joke." The overseer of Pardoning Heaven let out a cold laugh as the blood force of the Pardoning Heaven surged violently. The murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger. "Looks like this guy won't give up so easily." Mori Shire frowned, and his expression turned ugly. Nyetian had killed a member of the Pardoning Heaven clan, so this Pardoning Heaven overseer would never let this matter rest. "Come on." Nyetian frowned and sneered coldly. Sword will surge from his body, and his eyes shone with killing intent. "Aunt, you're courting death." Seeing that Nyetian still wanted to resist, the overseer of Pardoning Heaven couldn't help but sneer coldly. Taking a step forward, a surge of blood overseer's energy gushed out, blotting out the skies as it blasted towards Nyetian and Mori Shire. Nyetian and Mori Shire's expressions changed at the same time. Immediately, a sword and a palm whistled out. Bang! Bang! But in the next instant, the palm and sword were shattered by the blood overseer's energy. Thereafter, a violent wave of blood gushed down like a primordial beast, devouring Nyetian and Mori Shire. This guy's cultivation is at the first level heavenly tribulation, much stronger than the overseer from before. Nyetian exclaimed in his heart as he felt a suffocating pressure. The strength of the Pardoning Heaven overseer had far exceeded his expectations, leaving him with no chance to retaliate. Retreat! At the same time, Mori Shire let out a low roar as his silhouette shot out like an arrow. He could sense the terrifying energy contained within the blood overseer's energy. The all-devouring aura made him feel a great threat. Boom! Nyetian frowned as the demonic god energy in his body gushed out. He slammed out with his palm, blocking the violent wave of blood before retreating. "Aunt, you want to escape?" The Pardoning Heaven overseer sneered as the blood overseer's energy became even more terrifying. Waves of blood surged in the air like scarlet snakes, as if they wanted to devour the entire heaven and earth. Nietion and Mori Shire retreated a few thousand meters, barely stabilizing themselves. Nietion, this guy is too terrifying. Mori Shire looked at Nietion. Although he still maintained a calm expression, his eyes flickered, evidently flustered. Yeah. Nietion nodded his head. If he had acted a little slower, he would have been buried in the endless wave of blood. The overseer before him was far superior to the previous overseer. With the cultivation of a heavenly tribulation Saint Monarch, coupled with the power of the blood overseer's bloodline, his battle prowess was comparable to an ordinary peak heavenly tribulation Saint Monarch. Indeed, Nietion and Mori Shire were both top-notch geniuses, but their cultivation was too low. It was almost impossible for them to fight against this overseer. Die! At this time, the overseer of pardoning heaven roared and slammed his palm down. The surging waves of blood condensed into a blood-colored palm in the void, rolling and mighty. The terrifying pressure caused the surrounding space to emit a deep rumbling sound. Nietion, sword heart of heaven and earth. Mori Shire's gaze trembled as he felt the intense aura of death. However, he did not panic and only growled. Nietion frowned for a moment before reacting. Immediately, the soul of the sky in his body opened, and his sword intent erupted. The sword of the sky in his hand slashed through the air. With a heaven-defying strike, the sword's shadow was like a mad dragon as it slashed out. Scythe of the Grim Reaper, ultimate evil kill. Almost at the same time, Mori Shire growled. The scythe of the Grim Reaper appeared in his hand and spun in the air. Instantly, a dark evil symbol appeared and formed a giant evil character in the air. Boom! In the next moment, the evil character whizzed out, enveloping the outside of the sword shadow. Instantly, a violent sword aura was released, causing the air to rumble. Bang! Immediately, the blood-colored palm print descended and slammed into the sword shadow. After a loud explosion, the blood-colored palm print was pierced through. The terrifying wave of blood was like a tsunami, rolling and rampaging, spreading in all directions. This shocking scene caused the overseer's expression to change. He could not help but exclaim. He did not think that the combined attack of Nietion and Mori Shire would be so terrifying, directly blocking his attack. Boom! Immediately, the sword shadow soared into the sky as a violent force gushed out, forcing the overseer to retreat. How is this possible? The pardoning heaven overseer steadied himself. Though he was not injured, his eyes were filled with shock. His face was frozen as he shrieked. He could not believe his eyes. The two people before him, whom he viewed as ants, had forced him to retreat. Two hearts combined. At this moment, Nietion stood in the air and exclaimed. He did not think that the power of the sword earlier would be so terrifying. It was as if after his heart of the sky and Mori Shire's heart of evil combined, a shocking amount of power exploded. There was indeed a resonance between the two hearts, or else the sword earlier would not have been so terrifying. This also proved that the heart of the sky and earth had an extremely close connection. Chapter 3978. The overseer of pardoning heaven's expression changed drastically when he sensed Mori Shire's killing intent. Are these people from the outside world all insane? They want to kill the people of the pardoning heaven clan for no reason. Nietion was also shocked. He did not expect Mori Shire to be crazier than him. Mori Shire's expression darkened. Since Nietion had already killed a member of the pardoning heaven clan, killing another one was nothing. The people of the pardoning heaven clan had already seen him with Nietion. Therefore, even if he did not kill the person before him, the pardoning heaven clan would not let him go. Since they had completely infuriated the pardoning heaven clan, they might as well go crazy to the end. Nietion, haven't you always wanted to know the relationship between the heart of heaven and earth? Today, I'll show you the power of the resonance. At this moment, Doomsday 12 looked at Nietion and said in a loud voice, a sinister smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Sure, Nietion replied excitedly. It was obvious that Mori Shire's understanding of the heart of heaven and earth far surpassed his own. He was looking forward to seeing how strong the resonance was. How presumptuous! The overseer of pardoning heaven's expression sank as he let out a furious roar. The two people before him had clearly made up their minds to kill him. The current situation made him feel humiliated. No outsider had ever dared to act so insolently before the ancient sacred tribe. "I'll kill you first." At that moment, the overseer of pardoning heaven stared at Maury Shire coldly and let out a roar. His figure moved rapidly as boundless pardoning heaven blood-gathering force gushed out, crushing down on Maury Shire like a raging wave. Nietion. Doomsday 12 felt the powerful pressure, but he did not feel the slightest fear. Instead, the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile as he growled. Nietion replied and nodded his head. Immediately after, the sword in the sky shone brightly, like a raging sea enveloping Maury Shire. Death God scythe, doomsday slaughter. Maury Shire's face was solemn. He gripped the scythe of the god of death in his hand and spun it in the air, absorbing the sword well above his head. Then, on the scythe of the god of death, evil energy surged, and it actually fused with the sword will in the sky. Boom! Just at this moment, a low rumbling sound rang out, as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting apart. Dual heart resonance. Nietion's face darkened. He immediately felt the spirit of the sky in his body go berserk, like a wild beast that was about to charge out. Boom! In the next instant, Maury Shire slashed out with his saber. Instantly, evil energy gathered as a terrifying black sword shadow appeared, defying the heavens as it shot out, crazily killing everything in its path. Then, an incredible scene appeared. Bang! There was a loud bang in the air, and the rolling waves of blood collapsed. Then, the black sword shadow shot into the sky, like a mad dragon. Then, before the supervisor could even react, his body was directly engulfed by the black sword shadow, leaving nothing behind. This shocking scene caused Nietion's eyes to tremble. His expression changed abruptly, and he stood rooted to the ground, completely speechless. He could not imagine that the power of dual heart resonance was so terrifying that it could instantly kill the supervisor. One should know that the supervisor's combat strength was close to that of an ordinary peak Sage King Sage. Nietion, let's go. Just as Nietion was in shock, Maury Shire shouted, and without stopping, he directly flew away. Nietion frowned, and without even checking what the supervisor had left behind, he directly followed Maury Shire's figure. After a while, the two came to a valley, and only stopped after confirming that there were no other auras around. The Pardon Sky clan shouldn't appear again, right? Maury Shire looked around cautiously and said with some worry, "As long as we conceal our spirit auras, the Pardon Sky clan will not be able to monitor us." Nietion nodded and said, "That's good." Maury Shire nodded. He was in a hurry to leave earlier because he was afraid that the Pardon Sky clan would appear again. "Are you all right?" At this moment, Nietion saw a trace of blood flowing from the corner of Maury Shire's mouth, and his aura was slightly unstable. He could not help but ask, "I'm fine." Maury Shire nodded and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then looked at Nietion with a strange smile. "Nietion, you've seen the power of dual heart resonance, right?" "Emachum." Nietion nodded and said, "I didn't expect the power of dual heart resonance to be so terrifying." He was still incomparably shocked when he recalled the scene just now. Neither he nor Maury Shire was strong, but the power of dual heart resonance could instantly kill a heavenly tribulation realm Pardon Sky clan martial practitioner. It was truly unbelievable. The Heaven and Earth Core is far more terrifying than you can imagine. You will know in the future. Maury Shire smiled faintly with a mysterious expression. Nietion could tell that Maury Shire did not want to talk too much to him, so he did not ask. Instead, he said, "Maury Shire, have you been looking for me?" He found it very strange that Maury Shire seemed to be looking for him. Maury Shire nodded and said with a strange expression, The amount of sacred rheumatism you have collected now shouldn't be much, right? Nyetian furrowed his brows and said straightforwardly, "What's the matter? Just say it." "All right, I won't beat around the bush." Maury Shire nodded with a smile and said, "I know how to search for sacred rheumatism, but I need your help. We can work together. I want half of the sacred rheumatism you collect." "Half?" Nyetian's eyes darkened, and his lips curled into a smile. He said, "Tell me, how are you going to search for sacred rheumatism?" "This." Maury Shire smiled again. Then he flipped his palm, and a nearly transparent ball of light appeared in his palm. Formation. Eyebrows furrowed. Nyetian let out an exclamation of surprise. What Doomsday 12 had taken out was actually a small holy formation. "Try to sense it." Maury Shire smiled and raised his brows. Nyetian's eyes darkened. His divine sense entered the sacred formation, and his face instantly froze. It turned out that this sacred formation was a perception sacred formation. It could perfectly project everything within a few hundred kilometers into the sacred formation. "You want to use this sacred formation to search for sacred rheumatism?" Nyetian asked with a frown. "That's right." Maury Shire nodded and said, "This sacred formation of mine is called the holographic formation, and it's specifically used to search for things. As long as you put a drop of sacred rheumatism into the eye of the formation, the sacred formation will automatically sense all the sacred rheumatism within a few hundred kilometers." Nyetian's eyes trembled, and he was shocked. If the holographic sacred formation was as Maury Shire said, then it would be much easier to search for sacred rheumatism. Chapter 3979. Maury Shire looked at Nyetian with a burning gaze. It turned out that he was here for Nyetian's bloodline power. The holographic holy formation was extremely mysterious. It could perfectly project everything within hundreds of kilometers with the power of the formation. As long as the sacred rheumatism was placed in the eye of the formation, the holographic holy formation would be able to sense all the sacred rheumatism within hundreds of kilometers. However, the activation of the holographic holy formation required bloodline power, and the stronger the perception, the stronger the bloodline power required. If Maury Shire wanted to use the holographic holy formation to search for the sacred rheumatism, he needed a martialist with a powerful bloodline. And Nyetian was precisely the martial artist with a powerful bloodline that he needed. "So you need my bloodline power." Nyetian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his lips curled into a faint smile. The holographic holy formation was somewhat similar to his holographic divine runes. It could perfectly engrave or project what it sensed. However, the holographic holy formation's sensing ability was much stronger than the holographic divine runes. In reality, the holographic divine runes had terrifying sensing abilities, but Nyetian was focused on martial arts and did not have the time to cultivate the holographic divine runes. "Nyetian, the holographic holy formation can help us find the sacred rheumatism very quickly." Maury Shire nodded slightly and said, "As long as we work together, your 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism will be completed very quickly. After that, we'll split the sacred rheumatism equally. What do you think? Are you so sure that my bloodline power can activate the holographic holy formation?" Nyetian did not agree to it immediately. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile, "If your bloodline power can't activate the holographic holy formation, then nobody can." Maury Shire smiled faintly. He was actually very confident in Nyetian. Nyetian's eyes dimmed, and a strange look flashed across his face. However, he did not say much. Instead, he said, "Let's give it a try then. Come on." Maury Shire nodded with a smile before dripping a drop of sacred rheumatism into the holographic sacred formation. Immediately, a strong aura of sacred rheumatism filled the entire formation. Although it was a large array, the holographic sacred array was actually very small. On the surface, it looked like it was only the size of a palm. However, when one used their divine senses to perceive it, they would discover that there was another world within the large array. Nyetian looked at the array in front of him and took a deep breath. Then, he raised his hand, and the power of the gods and demons surged out from his palm and slowly poured into the holographic sacred array. Boom! The moment the God-Fiend power entered the sacred array, the entire array shook and began to operate. The power of the array patterns flowed endlessly, and a strong aura covered the entire valley. The holy formation has been activated. When Maury Shire saw this, he could not help but exclaim. At the same time, he glanced at Nyetian with a look of surprise. Although he appeared to be very confident in Nyetian, he was still shocked when he saw Nyetian activate the holographic sacred array. Previously, he had tried to activate the array with the power of his bloodline, but failed. The fact that Nyetian could activate the holographic sacred array undoubtedly meant that his bloodline power was stronger than Maury Shire's. Can you sense the holy color-flowing flame now? Nyetian's reaction was relatively calm as he asked in a plain voice. Don't worry, Maury Shire said with a smile. Try to sense the holographic sacred array now. Eyebrows furrowed, Nyetian sent his soul awareness into the grand spell formation. Immediately afterwards, his expression flickered. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, a deafening explosion resounded in his mind. The violent power of the array patterns surged in a frenzy, causing the entire formation to shake. Nyetian frowned. He did not expect the interior of this tiny holographic sacred array to be so violent. How long will it take for the holographic sacred array to sense the sacred rheumatism? He retracted his divine senses and asked in a deep voice. He was not concerned about what was happening in the holographic sacred array. He only wanted to know if the sacred array could really sense the sacred rheumatism. This is the first time the holographic sacred array has been activated. It will take some time, Maury Shire said with a faint smile when he saw Nyetian's impatience. Nyetian nodded. He could only wait patiently. After a while, the booming sound of the holographic sacred array weakened. The violent formation patterns calmed down and flowed slowly in the array, as though they were arranged according to a certain pattern. Then, after another half an hour or so, something strange happened. Bright spots of light appeared in the holographic sacred array. They were bright and dazzling, and they were distributed in the array like little stars. It's a success. Maury Shire's eyes were burning with excitement when he saw this. Are these light spots where the sacred rheumatism is located? Nyetian's expression changed too. His eyes were burning with excitement as he asked nervously. He saw dozens of light spots flickering in the array. Even if each light spot represented one drop of sacred rheumatism, there were dozens of drops of sacred rheumatism. Yes, Maury Shire nodded and smiled proudly. Nyetian, we have something to do now. All right, let's go look for the sacred rheumatism now. Nyetian nodded. He was overjoyed. Nyetian, carve the holographic sacred array with the holographic divine runes. We'll split up and look for it, Maury Shire said to Nyetian with a smile. Huh? Nyetian was stunned, and his expression changed slightly. Maury Shire actually knew that there was a holographic divine rune in his body. You can't be thinking that you're the only one with holographic divine runes, right? Maury Shire could not help but laugh when he saw Nyetian's reaction. He said, the holographic sacred array's runes are condensed from holographic divine runes. Nyetian's expression darkened slightly. He forced a smile and nodded. He was very curious. Since the holographic sacred array's runes were condensed from holographic divine runes, why did the rune's aura not resemble holographic divine runes at all when he sensed the array? Could it be that there was more than one type of holographic divine rune? Nyetian, hurry up. Maury Shire did not give Nyetian too much time to think and urged him. Okay. Nyetian agreed and did not say anything else. He began to carve the holographic divine runes on the entire holographic sacred array. After an hour, beads of sweat appeared on Nyetian's forehead. He finally succeeded in carving the holographic sacred array. Let's split up and look for the sacred rheumatism in this area. Then, we'll meet back here, Maury Shire said to Nyetian with a faint smile. Wait a minute. Nyation suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed slightly. He said, "The holographic sacred array has already been activated. Don't tell me you won't come back." Chapter 3980. Nyation went blank for a moment before smiling bitterly. It seemed like he was being too petty. Ever since Maury Shire had appeared, he had been helping him. At least, he had not done anything to hurt him. It did not seem like Maury Shire would fall out with Nyation for a mere sacred rheumatism. More importantly, even if Maury Shire collected a large amount of sacred rheumatism, he would not be able to bring it out. Among all the martial artists who entered the sacred ancestor land, only Nyation had the chance to bring the sacred rheumatism out. With a faint smile, Nyation said, "All right, let's go." Then, he blurred into action and flew towards a glowing spot. A strange smile appeared at the corner of Doomsday's mouth as he watched Nyation's back. Then, he vanished as well. A moment later, Nyation came to a dense forest and stopped. According to the holographic holy formation, there should be sacred rheumatism here, he said as he sensed carefully. At this moment, his expression changed slightly and a surprised smile appeared on his face. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the top of a giant tree. There were many strange, white flowers hanging at the top of the tree. One of the flowers was different from the others. Not only was the flower much bigger, but it was also of a strange color. It was vaguely colorful. That's it. Nyation's gaze was fixed on the cluster of flowers, and a burning desire flickered in his eyes. Then, he leaped into the air and reached out his hand to pluck the 7 colored flowers. A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of Nyation's mouth as sword intent surged out of his palm. The cluster of 7 colored flowers instantly vanished, and a drop of holy rainbow, flowing flame appeared. The holographic holy formation is really powerful. He put away the sacred rheumatism and exclaimed. The holographic holy formation could accurately sense all the holy color rheumatism within a few hundred kilometers, which greatly increased the efficiency of collecting the holy color rheumatism. With the help of the holographic holy formation, it wouldn't be difficult for Nyation to collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism. Next, Nyation followed the guidance of the holographic holy formation and quickly collected 2 bottles of sacred rheumatism. Several days later, Nyation and Maury Shire had collected all the holy color rheumatism within hundreds of kilometers. Nyation, how much sacred rheumatism have you collected? Maury Shire asked excitedly as he looked at Nyation. 2 bottles. Nyation smiled faintly and asked, "What about you?" "Me too." Maury Shire nodded and said, "At this rate, we'll be able to collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism very soon." Nyation nodded slightly, but his expression didn't look good. He said, "Although this rate is fast, it's still a little slow. Even if we can collect 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism, there won't be much left in the end." He and Maury Shire had collected 4 bottles of sacred rheumatism in 5 days, which was already very good. However, because Nyation had wasted a lot of time previously, and they could only stay in the sacred ancestral grounds for a month, they didn't have much left after handing over 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism. Nyation had almost risked his life to obtain sacred rheumatism, so it wouldn't be worth it if he only obtained 1 or 2 bottles of sacred rheumatism in the end. "Nyation, you want more sacred rheumatism, right?" Maury Shire looked at Nyation and asked. "Of course." Nyation laughed and said, "It wasn't easy for us to come to the sacred ancestral grounds. It would be a pity if we only brought 1 or 2 bottles of sacred rheumatism." "That's true." The corner of Maury Shire's mouth twitched, and his eyes suddenly flickered. "I have an idea that we can try." "What is it?" Nyation asked with a frown. With a somewhat strange look in his eyes, Doomsday 12 looked down at the holy formation in his palm and said, "Nyation, you must have noticed that each of the light spots in the holy formation are of different brightness. You mean that the amount of sacred rheumatism determines the sensitivity of the holographic sacred formation?" Nyation's expression changed, and he immediately understood. He said, "The more sacred rheumatism there is, the stronger the holographic sacred formation sensitivity, right?" In fact, he had already noticed that there were places where he had collected more than one drop of sacred rheumatism, and the light spots on the holographic sacred formation were brighter in those places. Yes, Maurice Shire nodded and said, I can strengthen the holographic sacred formation's power and make it more sensitive to sacred rheumatism. However, this will require you to use a stronger bloodline power. All right. Yet Tion's eyes narrowed, and he nodded heavily. Then Maurice Shire said nothing more and started to strengthen the holographic sacred formation. Half a day later, Maurice Shire strengthened the holographic proof of life and said to Nyetion, it's your turn. Nyetion nodded and didn't say anything else. He directly activated his god-demon body, gathered his god-demon power on his palm, and injected it into the holographic sacred formation. Boom! In an instant, the holographic sacred formation rumbled, and the formation pattern's power became extremely violent, as if they were roaring. Such a powerful aura. Nyetion's expression changed when he sensed the majestic aura of the formation. He was shocked. When he activated his god-demon body, his god-demon power was much more powerful than usual. Coupled with the strengthening of the holographic sacred formation itself, the entire formation's power increased by more than a few times. After a long time, the holographic sacred formation calmed down and the formation pattern slowly recovered. After a while, light spots appeared in the formation again. The holographic sacred formation's power has increased. These light spots should be the sacred rheumatism that's hidden deeper. Maurice Shire smiled faintly and said, we can change to another place now. The sacred rheumatism is hidden too deeply. I'm afraid it won't be easy to collect it. What's with that light spot? Nyetion frowned, and his eyes focused on a faintly discernible light spot. Compared to the other light spots, that light spot was slightly weaker. However, the light spot had a large surface area, and it was almost a light ball. Doomsday 12 frowned, his divine sense locking onto the ball of light. His face slowly became filled with shock, and then he was completely dumbfounded. Maurice Shire, what did you find? Nyetion's expression also changed when he saw Maurice Shire's reaction, and he asked nervously, this light ball is also the detection of the sacred rheumatism. Maurice Shire reacted after a long time. His expression was strange and excited, and his voice was also trembling. If the holographic sacred formation didn't sense wrongly, there should be a sacred rheumatism bloodline here. Chapter 3981. Maurice Shire's eyes glowed with a strange light. He seemed very excited, as if he was anticipating something. Nyetion was excited too. He had known Maurice Shire for a long time, but he had never seen the latter so nervous. It seemed like the sacred rheumatism's sacred meridian was indeed a terrifying thing. Let's confirm the location of the sacred meridian first and set off right away. Maurice Shire calmed down a little after a while, but he could not hide the excitement in his eyes. If they really found the rheumatism sacred meridian, it would not be a matter of 10 bottles of sacred rheumatism, but a massive sacred rheumatism meridian. Nyetion nodded as his eyes glowed with a strange light. He had no idea what the rheumatism sacred meridian was like, so he was looking forward to it. After a while, the two of them confirmed the location of the rheumatism sacred meridian and set off right away. Soon, they arrived at an extremely secluded canyon. They were standing at the top of the canyon, and there was a massive bottomless chasm in front of them. On the other side of the chasm was a huge mountain. It was extremely steep and straight, and the mountain wall was smooth as if it had been created by someone. According to the holographic holy formation, the rheumatism sacred meridian is nearby, Maurice Shire said as he looked around and sensed. Nyetion nodded and also sensed the aura around them. However, their expressions became strange after a while. Apart from the chasm canyon, the huge mountain, and some trees and rocks, there was nothing else. Nyetion and Maurice Shire sensed for a long time, but they did not sense any sacred rheumatism aura at all. That's strange. The rheumatism sacred meridian is here. Why isn't there any aura? Maurice Shire was confused and could not help but ask. Nyetion was also puzzled. Previously, When he used the holographic holy formation to collect holy color rheumatism, he could accurately pinpoint the location of the holy color rheumatism. Why couldn't he find anything this time? Logically speaking, the aura of the sacred bloodline of rheumatism should be stronger. How could it be hidden in a place like this? The holographic holy formation can't be wrong. The rheumatism holy bloodline must be here. Mori Shire said with determination as he sensed the holographic holy formation again. Nietion didn't say anything. Instead, he stared at the huge mountain in front of him, and his expression slowly became strange. What did you find? Mori Shire saw Nietion's strange expression and couldn't help but frown and ask. Nietion's face was as calm as still water, as if he did not hear Mori Shire's words. Mori Shire couldn't help but feel even more puzzled. His divine sense moved towards the huge mountain wall in front of him, the aura of a formation. After a while, Mori Shire's eyes trembled and he shouted in surprise. He actually sensed the aura of a formation on the mountain wall. Could it be that there was a formation protecting the mountain in front of him? The rheumatism holy bloodline should be in this mountain. After a long time, Nietion's expression changed slightly, and he said in a deep voice, Mori Shire nodded and immediately moved. He took a step forward and stood coldly in front of the mountain wall. His aura surged violently and formed a huge handprint in the void, which directly bombarded the mountain wall. Bang! In the next moment, the mountain was hit by the impact. Then, several formation runes appeared in the void and surged like streams of light. Immediately, Mori Shire was hit and his body shook, and he was directly sent flying. The rheumatism holy bloodline really is in this mountain. Mori Shire steadied himself, and his face was pale as he said in a deep voice. Just now, he sensed an extremely intense aura of the holy rheumatism holy bloodline. It was obvious that the rheumatism holy bloodline was in this mountain. Nietion nodded and said, "It seems like someone already knew that there was a rheumatism holy bloodline here, so they protected it with a formation. The rheumatism holy bloodline is right in front of us. If we want to enter, we must first break the formation in front of us." Mori Shire frowned and said in a deep voice, "The formation's power is not strong. It seems to be activated by the power of the blood." Nietion nodded. His eyes were filled with passion. "All right, let's try." Mori Shire responded and stepped forward again. The power of the blood in his body surged, and the terrifying power was like a tsunami, causing the surrounding space to rumble. At the same time, Nietion also stepped forward. The power of the gods and demons soared into the sky, and a dark aura spread out, filling up the space within hundreds of thousands of meters. Boom! Boom! In the next second, the two of them moved at the same time. The power of their blood shot into the sky, and their ferocious aura pressed against the formation. Bang! As the two powers of the blood landed, a muffled bang was heard in the sky. The formation was directly broken, and the terrifying power of the formation surged in the sky. Nietion and Armageddon's eyes flickered with joy upon seeing this. They hadn't expected the grand spell formation to be broken so easily. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying explosion was heard. Suddenly, the huge mountain cracked open like a door, and it slowly opened. Nietion and Mori Shire's eyes were trembling. It was obvious that they were extremely excited. A moment later, a huge tunnel appeared on the mountain, as if it was a door to another world. "Enter!" Nietion and Mori Shire exchanged glances with one another before they moved. Like two rays of light, they dove into the tunnel. At the same time, in the mysterious valley, Shi Tianluan and the others stared at the great guardian formation in front of them in astonishment. Boom! In the great guardian formation, a huge ball of white light appeared, emitting a blinding white glow, causing the entire formation to become extremely bright. "Master, what's going on?" The people of the Pardoning Sky clan had never seen something like this before. They looked at Shi Tianluan in astonishment. Shi Tianluan was the person in charge of the sacred color rheumatism gathering. At this moment, his face was tense, and he was completely speechless. He had no idea what was happening to the Great Guardian Formation. Why was it reacting so strangely all of a sudden? The crowd could only stare blankly after seeing that Shi Tianluan was not speaking, not daring to say anything further. Could that be the legendary heart of rheumatism? At that instant, a deep voice could be heard. Every word was like a clap of thunder, echoing in the crowd's ears. Everyone's eyes widened as they turned around and stared at the person who had spoken. The astonishment in their hearts was written all over their faces. Chapter 3982. This. Xie Tianluan stared at the Xie Tian, 7 bones, with trembling eyes. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, but he was filled with unconcealable excitement as he said, "That's impossible, right? The Guardian Formation can not only sense the divine soul aura of all the warriors in the ancestral sacred land, but it can also sense everything in the entire ancestral sacred land, especially the aura of the holy rainbow rheumatism." Out-Yin Shigu's eyes darkened slightly. He forced himself to calm down and said, "The Guardian Formation cannot detect the aura of the divine soul. I can sense a small amount of holy color rheumatism, but I can sense a large amount of holy color rheumatism, especially rheumatism, saint bloodline, the sacred bloodline of rheumatism." Shi Tianluan could not help but scream when she heard what Out-Yin Shigu said. "Yes." Out-Yin Shigu nodded and said, "I heard from the Grand Elder that when our pardoning Sky Clan was collecting saint color rheumatism, we relied on the Guardian Formation to find the saint rheumatism veins. But now, the sacred rainbow rheumatism in the entire ancestral land have been almost completely harvested. I won't be able to sense the sacred bloodline of rheumatism. I'm sure that this ball of light is the Guardian Formation's response to the rheumatism saint bloodline. Therefore, where the light ball is, there must be a rheumatism sacred bloodline." He spoke very resolutely, his eyes filled with passion and excitement. "This." Shi Tianluan's face darkened. She looked confused and uncertain as she asked, "Then why didn't the Guardian Formation sense the rheumatism saint bloodline before? Someone must have discovered the location of the rheumatism sacred bloodline and exposed the aura of the rheumatism sacred bloodline." Out-Yin Shigu frowned and said in a deep voice, "Shigu, how confident are you in your conjecture?" Shi Tianluan was silent for a while, then looked at Out-Yin Shigu and asked, 10 out of 10. The corner of Out-Yin Shigu's mouth twitched as he replied in a deep voice. He was very sure that what the Guardian Formation had sensed was the rheumatism saint bloodline, and it was very likely that the legendary heart of rheumatism had appeared. All right, Shi Tianluan could sense the determination in Out-Yin Shigu's eyes. Her expression changed slightly as she said, "I'll inform the Great Elder and the others and ask them to send someone over immediately." "Yes." Out-Yin Shigu nodded and said, "I'll go to the place where the rheumatism sacred bloodline is located now. I'd like to see who exactly found the sacred bloodline of rheumatism." When he said this, his eyes were deep and murderous, clearly surging with terrifying killing intent. He had already made up his mind that no matter who found the rheumatism sacred bloodline, he would kill them at the first opportunity. The rheumatism sacred bloodline could only belong to the Pardon Heaven clan. It would be blasphemy for outsiders to even take a look at it. Both of you informed the Great Elder immediately that the rheumatism sacred bloodline was found in the ancestral land. At this moment, Shi Tianluan looked at the 2 martial artists beside her and said in a deep voice, "Yes." The 2 responded and left immediately. "Shigu, bring some people over now. I'll guard here." Then, Shi Tianluan's eyes darkened as she looked at Out-Yin Shigu and said, "It's fine. I'll go alone." A wisp of coldness curled up the corners of Xie Tian's mouth, and then he didn't wait for Xie Tianluan's reply before he directly took a step forward and entered the Guardian Formation, and then he instantly vanished. Shi Tianluan's face darkened when she saw that Out-Yin Shigu did not listen to her, but she did not say anything. Of course, she knew that Out-Yin Shigu was trying to take the credit. However, it was nothing. This time, Shi Tianluan was in charge of collecting the sacred rheumatism sacred bloodline. Even if Out-Yin Shigu was the first to find the rheumatism sacred bloodline, Shi Tianluan would still be the biggest credit. Under the circumstances where the sacred rheumatism sacred bloodline was extremely lacking, Shi Tianluan would be able to join the Elders Guild directly by finding a rheumatism sacred bloodline for the Pardon Heaven clan. At the thought of this, Xie Tianluan's eyes shone with a fiery light, and he became excited. The haze of the Pardon Heaven clan's death was swept away. Meanwhile, at the natural moat canyon, as soon as Niet Tian and Mori Shire entered the mountain's tunnel, they immediately sensed a strong, sacred rheumatism aura. They were shocked and excited. Niet Tian, we've made the right bet this time. We really found a rheumatism sacred bloodline. Mori Shire looked at Niet Tian with a strange glint in his eyes. He seemed very proud of himself. Niet Tian nodded. He was also very excited. Following that, the two walked forward along the tunnel. The deeper they went, the stronger the sacred rheumatism aura became. A moment later, they finally arrived at the end of the tunnel. A colorful light appeared before them. It was very beautiful. The two quickened their pace when they saw this and soon arrived at the end of the tunnel. At that moment, there was a huge abyss in front of them. However, the abyss was not filled with darkness. Instead, it was filled with colorful lights. Niet Tian and Mori Shire looked at each other and looked into the abyss at the same time. They instantly sensed a strong rheumatism aura. The huge abyss in front of them was so vast that they could not see the bottom. The entire abyss was filled with colorful lights, like an ocean of light. Niet Tian and Mori Shire stared blankly for a long time. They were mesmerized by the beautiful scene before them. They did not expect the world behind the mountain to be like this. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, a deep rumble suddenly came from the abyss. Following that, a terrifying heat wave rushed out like a lava beast, turning the surrounding space into a furnace. Such a strong aura. Niet Tian and Mori Shire felt the heat. Their expressions changed at the same time. It was as if the abyss was a huge fire pit, and there was a hidden sea of fire at the bottom of the abyss. However, they could still withstand the heat wave, and it would not cause them any harm. Niet Tian, it seems like the sacred bloodline of rheumatism is in the abyss, Mori Shire said after taking a deep breath and calming down. Niet Tian nodded and said, "Let's go into the abyss and see what's down there." However, at that moment, a deep laugh rang out. Then a figure shot out like an arrow from a bow and landed in front of Niet Tian and Apocalypse 12 in the blink of an eye. It was none other than the 7 bones of heaven pardoning. Niet Tian saw that the figure that suddenly appeared was Out Yin Shigu. He could not help but exclaim, "It's you. I didn't expect you to be the one who discovered the sacred bloodline of rheumatism." Out Yin Shigu's eyes were filled with coldness as he stared at Niet Tian with a murderous intent. He did not expect Niet Tian to be the one who discovered the sacred bloodline of rheumatism. Chapter 3983. Pardoning Heaven, 7 Bones' eyes were filled with a sinister, killing intent. The corner of his mouth twitched as if he was a man-eating monster. Niet Tian, it seems like this guy doesn't want to leave anyone alive. Doomsday 12 sensed the 7 bones of Pardoning Heaven's monstrous killing intent and could not help but twitch the corners of his mouth. He initially did not want to become an enemy of Out Yin Shigu. However, there was an entire sacred bloodline of rheumatism in front of him. It was enough for him to take the risk. To him, it was not important whether he could enter the 5 academies or not. What was important was the sacred bloodline of rheumatism in front of him. He was determined to get it. The Pardon Sky clan treats us outsiders as ants, but now we are the ones who discovered the sacred bloodline of rheumatism. You must feel humiliated, right? Niet Tian's eyes dimmed as he stared at Out Yin Shigu cold. If he were to face Out Yin Shigu alone, he would have no chance of winning. However, things would be different if he teamed up with Mori Shire. The resonance between the two of them had just killed a guardian of Pardoning Heaven not long ago, and its might was unimaginably great. You're right. Ants do not have the right to discover the sacred bloodline of rheumatism. Out Yin Shigu's face darkened as he sneered. However, since you've discovered it, it has saved us a lot of trouble. Nietion's lips twitched as his eyes were filled with disdain. Aoyin Chigu made it sound nice. Without him and Mori Shire, the Pardon Sky clan would not have discovered the existence of the sacred bloodline of rheumatism. You two ants actually discovered the existence of the sacred bloodline of rheumatism. This is beyond my expectation. Aoyin Chigu's expression was cold as he said with a deep voice, "On behalf of the Pardon Heaven clan, the greatest gift I can give you is to bury you here." As he uttered the last word, the killing intent in Aoyin Chigu's eyes intensified. The murderous intent in his body was monstrous, as though the god of death had descended. Indeed, allowing two outsiders to die in the ancestral grounds of the ancient sacred clan was a great blessing. "Let's fight." Nietion's eyes darkened. He didn't say anything unnecessary and directly glanced at Mori Shire. "Yes." Mori Shire nodded. He extended his hand, and the Grim Reaper scythe appeared. Instantly, the surrounding void was filled with a terrifying, dark, evil energy. Boom! At the same time, Nietion raised a sword in the sky, and a huge sword will shot up into the sky, as if it was going to suppress everything. Aoyin Chigu felt the aura in the void and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. His dark eyes glanced at Nietion and Mori Shire. After a cold snicker, he said playfully, "You two ants are quite interesting." The dark, evil energy from the Grim Reaper's scythe and the sword in the sky were both terrifying energies, surprising Aoyin Chigu. What surprised him even more was that the aura from the Grim Reaper's scythe and the sword in the sky seemed to be resonating with each other. These were two completely different auras. Why would they be resonating with each other? This was far too strange. You will find out how interesting this is in a bit. Nietionling laughed. He then stomped his foot on the ground, and swordwool gushed out of his body. The mighty aura was like a tsunami that swept across the void. The enormous sword aura was like a mountain that swallowed the sky. Your swordwool is not bad, but your cultivation is too weak. Seeing this, the heaven-pardoning Seven Bones sneered and took a step forward. Instantly, a terrifying aura that caused one's heart to palpitate appeared and surged in all directions. It actually directly crushed Nietion's sword momentum and forced him to retreat repeatedly. This guy's aura is terrifying. Nietion stabilized his body. His eyes trembled in shock. Aoyin Chigu was much stronger than he had imagined. Previously, when he met the supervisor of Pardoning Heaven, one of them was in the first rank of Heavenly Calamity, while Aoyin Chigu was only in the 9th rank of Heavenly Righteousness. However, Aoyin Chigu's aura was many times stronger than the supervisor's. Nietion, this guy is too strong. Be careful. Mori Shire frowned. In an instant, he appeared beside Nietion and stood shoulder to shoulder with the latter. At this moment, they must team up to fight against Aoyin Chigu. Boom! At this moment, the aura of the Scythe of Death and the Sword in the Sky merged in the void, creating a tsunami that caused the void to rumble. Seeing this, Aoyin Chigu was not afraid. Instead, he sneered and his eyes were filled with excitement. This is getting more and more interesting. At this moment, he was like a hunter. Only when there was a challenging prey would his desire to fight be ignited. Attack! Facing such a strong opponent, Nietion and Mori Shire did not dare to be careless. After exchanging glances, they growled at the same time. Then, the Sword in the Sky and the Scythe of Death appeared at the same time. Instantly, a huge wave of aura appeared and crashed towards Aoyin Chigu. Feeling the overwhelming aura, Aoyin Chigu could not help but tremble. At this moment, he actually felt threatened. Two foreign martial artists in the first rank of Heavenly Righteousness actually made him feel threatened. This was unbelievable. This was a disgrace to him. Wrath of blood. In the next moment, heaven-pardoning Seven Bones' eyes trembled coldly. His pupils turned crimson, and he seemed to have turned into a bloodthirsty beast in an instant. Bloodlaw energy surged from his body, and a huge crimson wave surged into the sky, almost materializing in the air. Substance. The huge aura seemed to want to devour everything. Bang! Then the two extreme powers collided. The heavens and earth shook, and the terrifying power exploded. It turned into thousands of waves in the sky and rampaged in all directions. Nyetian and Mori Shire were hit by the impact. Their bodies trembled at the same time, and they were sent flying into the sky above the abyss. On the other side, Aoyan Shigu only took a few steps back before stabilizing himself. However, his eyes were extremely sharp. They locked on Nyetian and Mori Shire with heavy killing intent. He did not think that his full-powered attack with his bloodline would fail to kill Nyetian and Mori Shire. Were the two martial artists in the first rank of heavenly righteousness really standing before him? He knew that Nyetian and Mori Shire were genius martial artists in the all-heaven sacred world. However, in his eyes, geniuses in the all-heaven sacred world were no different from trash. But now his thinking seemed to have changed. Nyetian and Mori Shire stood coldly in the sky above the abyss. Their bodies were surrounded by surging waves of heat. The scorching aura was about to set them on fire. Previously, they did not think that the waves of heat in the abyss were very powerful. But now that they were personally experiencing it, they knew how terrifying it was. This guy is indeed difficult to deal with. His strength is much more terrifying than the first-rank Heavenly Tribulation custodian. Nyetian's eyes were cold. He was shocked. Chapter 3984. He is too strong. We are no match for him. Mori Shire's eyes trembled as blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He was severely injured from the previous exchange of blows. He was already injured when he teamed up with Nyetian and had not fully recovered. Now that he was facing Aoyan Shigu, he was severely injured. "Are you all right?" Nyetian frowned and asked in a deep voice. Mori Shire's body was taken from the Holy Son of all evil, and he should not have fully adapted to it. Moreover, his martial body was not as strong as Nyetian's. Even Nyetian was sent flying by the impact. It was obvious that Mori Shire was not in a good state. "Don't worry, I won't die so easily before I see the rheumatism Saint bloodline," Mori Shire said with a smile. Nyetian frowned and looked down, only to see multicolored streaks of light down below. They were incomparably dazzling and beautiful. At the same time, waves of terrifying heat kept surging out of them like enormous fire snakes, as if they were going to burn and devour everything. "The rheumatism Saint bloodline is down there. Looks like we have to go down and take a look," Nyetian said as he squinted his eyes. "Okay." Mori Shire nodded. He was about to enter the abyss. Aoyan Shigu was too strong. Even with their heart resonance, they could not fight against him. Now that they could not fight against Aoyan Shigu, it was better to avoid him. "Okay." Nyetian's eyes dimmed as he agreed. He immediately moved and dove into the abyss. Mori Shire immediately followed after him. "Are you trying to escape?" Aoyan Shigu's expression darkened. His crimson eyes trembled as he took a step forward and chased after him. Nyetian and Mori Shire were in the void. The wind was howling in their ears, and they were surrounded by 7-colored flowing lights. It was as if they were in an illusion. However, as they went deeper and deeper, the heat waves in the surrounding space became more and more terrifying, making them feel like they were going to burn up. At the same time, the aura of the holy color rheumatism grew stronger and stronger. Nyetian felt that the bloodline power in his body was going berserk, as if his entire body was about to explode. However, this was an explosion of power. Not only did it not cause him any pain, but it also gave him a very comfortable feeling. Mori Shire, who was standing at the side, was overjoyed. It was obvious that he felt the same way. "2 ants die for me." At this moment, a deep and furious roar came from the sky. Aoyan Shigu's entire body was covered in blood. He was like a berserk, blood-red giant beast as he charged at Nyetian and Mori Shire crazily. Boom! Seeing this, Mori Shire and Nyetian attacked again with the scythe of the god of death and the sword of the sky. Suddenly, the surrounding space rumbled. Bang! In the next moment, a terrifying collision sound was heard. The explosive force rolled out and spread wildly in the surrounding space. Nietion and Morishire were hit by the blast and fell rapidly. The scorching blast around them almost burned them. Poof! The 12 people of Doomsday vomited a mouthful of blood in midair, their faces becoming as white as paper. He joined forces with Nietion and blocked out Yanchigu's palm once again. However, he was also heavily injured. Hang in there, Nietion frowned. A ball of elemental energy gushed out from his palm and entered Morishire's body. Morishire nodded heavily. His complexion improved slightly. However, at this moment, a strange scene occurred. Nietion and Morishire suddenly realized that the speed of their fall had become faster and faster. It was as if they were falling straight down. What's going on? The sudden change made Nietion's expression change. He could not help but exclaim. Morishire was stunned. He was also extremely shocked. At this moment, the heat around them became more and more terrifying. Waves of heat seeped into their bodies, making them feel as if their bodies were on fire. Steady yourself, Morishire growled. He wanted to stabilize his body, but it was completely useless. Not only did the speed of their fall not slow down, it became even faster. Nietion was shocked. It was as if there was a huge suction force at the bottom of the abyss that was forcefully sucking them down. Furthermore, the suction force was too strong. There was no way to resist it. Morishire, don't resist this suction force. Just be careful not to let the heat hurt you. Nietion's expression changed slightly. He spoke in a deep voice and immediately activated the shield of star souls to block the heat from consuming his body. Morishire understood and nodded. A layer of dark shield appeared around his body to block the terrifying heat. At this moment, Ao Yanchigu also arrived. Obviously, he felt the huge suction force and could not help but exclaim in surprise. At this moment, Nietion and the rest were falling faster and faster. The heat around their bodies turned into terrifying flames. What's down there? Nietion frowned and looked at the rolling heat with a strange expression. He was very curious about what kind of world it was down there. After a moment, Nietion felt the speed of their fall begin to slow down. The surrounding heat also began to weaken. Then, the speed of their fall became slower and slower. Finally, it came to a stop. Nietion and Morishire's figures were suspended in midair. There was no longer any heat around them. There was only colorful light. The world in front of them was filled with gentle light. It was like an illusion in a dream. Nietion and Morishire were stunned for a long time. After a long time, they finally reacted and asked in a daze, "What is this place?" The scene in front of them was too beautiful. It was a huge visual impact. Could this be the sacred bloodline of rheumatism? At this moment, an astonished voice sounded. Nietion and Morishire suddenly looked up. It turned out that Ao Yanchigu had also arrived. Ao Yanchigu was shocked. It was as if he did not see Nietion and Morishire at all. He looked around. On the huge mountain walls, crimson flames flowed like magma, releasing an incomparably hot aura. Nietion and Morishire were slightly stunned. Only then did they notice that there was lava flowing like liquid flames on the mountain wall. Morishire's eyes trembled. He stared at the flowing flames on the mountain wall and exclaimed, "That's sacred color rheumatism." Those liquid flames were rolling like tongues. In addition to being extremely hot, they also released a powerful aura. It was the aura of sacred color rheumatism. Chapter 30-985. Nietion was dumbfounded as he looked at the rheumatism sacred veins on the walls around him. He could not react for a long time. It was hard to imagine how much sacred rheumatism there was. The amount of holy rainbow flowing flames here was not just a few drops or a few bottles, but an entire river. One must know that a single drop of sacred rheumatism was extremely valuable. The rheumatism sacred vein in front of them was priceless. Morishire was dumbfounded as he was equally shocked. All they wanted was more sacred rheumatism. Now that they saw an entire rheumatism sacred vein, how could they not be excited? Rheumatism sacred vein. It's really the rheumatism sacred vein. Ha ha. At that moment, Aoyin Chigu laughed hysterically. His eyes were burning and trembling, and his face was filled with greed as if he had gone mad. It was his first time seeing such a huge rheumatism sacred vein. What's that? At that moment, Nietian calmed down a little. Suddenly, he sensed an unusual aura from below, causing his expression to change as he looked over. In the abyss below, a blazing white ball of light floated and spun continuously, releasing a blazing aura into the surroundings. This aura is so terrifying. Doomsday 12 also noticed the blazing white ball of light. His face trembled in shock, and he couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The blazing white ball of light seemed to contain an endless amount of sacred rheumatism. The aura within it was so strong that it made one's blood restless. The heart of rheumatism. Just as Nietian and the 12 Apocalypse sons were bewildered, the heaven-pardoning seven bones let out a cry of alarm as they stared at the blazing white ball of light. Their faces instantly stiffened, as if they had seen something extremely terrifying. Heart of rheumatism. Nietian and Mori Shire exclaimed in surprise at the same time. What was this thing? Did it have anything to do with holy color rheumatism? The heart of rheumatism was said to be able to create the holy color rheumatism. It was also known as the mother of rheumatism. It was said that all the sacred rheumatism in the sacred ancestral land came from the heart of rheumatism. However, the heart of rheumatism had always been a legend of the Pardon Sky clan. It was passed down from generation to generation, but no one had ever seen the real heart of rheumatism. It was the same for Aoyin Chigu. He had only heard of the heart of rheumatism, but had never seen it before. But at this moment, he was very sure that the blazing white ball of light before him was the legendary heart of rheumatism. His bloodline power contained an extremely strong aura of holy rheumatism. Standing outside the ball of light, his blood was boiling as if it was going to burn. However, he did not feel any pain. Instead, he felt like his power was exploding, as if his body was going to break through its limit and undergo a metamorphosis. What exactly is the flowing flame heart? Why is it causing such a reaction from the seven bones of pardoning heaven? Nietian looked at the seven bones of pardoning heaven and could not help furrowing his brow. Ants, it's your honor to be able to see the legendary heart of rheumatism. At this moment, Aoyin Chigu's burning gaze trembled slightly. A chilling, killing intent flashed across his eyes. He then stared at Nietian and Mori Shire and said in a deep voice, "Now it's time to end you too. It's time." Nietian and Mori Shire felt the killing intent, and their expressions changed at the same time. At this moment, they were too weak. Even if they used the dual heart resonance, they would not be able to fight against Aoyin Chigu. Die. Then, Aoyin Chigu let out a low growl and wanted to attack. However, in the next moment, his body froze, and he said in shock, "What's going on? My power seems to have been sealed." He looked at his hands in shock, as if he had seen a ghost. Nietian was taken aback. He frowned, and then his expression changed. He tried to activate his vitality meridians, but realized that they were being suppressed by an invisible force. He could not release any power at all. How is this possible? I can't even use the power of stars. Then, his expression changed again. He realized that the power of stars was being suppressed by the invisible force and could not be released. At this moment, Mori Shire seemed to have discovered something. His eyes became strange, and he said in a deep voice, "Nietian, look at the space around us. Isn't it different from the space we've been in before?" Different? Nietian was stunned at first. He then raised his hand and felt around in the void. His expression changed again, and he said in shock, "This is a weightless space." He suddenly realized that the space they were in was a completely weightless space. No wonder they could float in midair, even though their power was completely sealed. This. Doomsday 12 was taken aback for a moment, but then he reacted and his expression changed. Nietian frowned, and his eyes shone with a sharp light. He looked up into the sky and realized that there was a layer of protective barrier in the sky. It was very strange. I understand now. We are currently in the inner space of the heart of rheumatism. Suddenly, the fat cat's voice rang out. She let out a cry of surprise. She seemed to be very shocked and excited at the same time. What do you mean? Nietion went blank for a moment, confused. We have entered the heart of rheumatism. The fat cat was pleasantly surprised. She smiled and said, "The heart of rheumatism is a treasure of the heavens and earth. Its internal space is a formation of its own. The halo shield that you see is actually the outer shell of the heart of rheumatism. Because we have already entered the inner space of the heart of rheumatism, we can't see through it. All sorts of powers were suppressed. Moreover, this space exists independently from the outside world, which causes the current situation of weightlessness." Nietion frowned and nodded. So that's how it is. In fact, he only understood about half of it. He was curious. They had entered the inner space of the heart of rheumatism. All sorts of powers were suppressed. Why was the fat cat still so excited? Indeed, the current situation was beneficial to them. Otherwise, Aoi and Shigu would have started a massacre. "Fat, I can't seem to move now." At this moment, Nietion realized that he was completely trapped. It was difficult for him to move his body. Of course, the fat smiled and said, "This is the inner space of the heart of rheumatism. It is completely sealed. If you want to move, you will have to rely on other powers." Nietion frowned and looked confused. "Nietion, being able to enter the inner space of the heart of rheumatism is a great opportunity for you." The fat cat did not explain too much. Instead, she smiled and said excitedly with a pair of blazing eyes, "Great opportunity?" Nietion was stunned for a moment. He could not react in time. Entering the inner space of the heart of rheumatism is a great opportunity to merge with the heart of rheumatism. The fat cat smiled again. Her eyes were shining with a strange light. Chapter 3986. Nietion was shocked by the fat cat's words. He was stunned for a few seconds before he regained his senses. "Fat, can I really integrate the heart of rheumatism?" Nietion's lips twitched and his voice was trembling. He only wanted to obtain some holy rheumatism, but now there was a chance to integrate the heart of rheumatism. How could he not be excited? "Don't you want to?" Fat Cat smiled proudly and asked. "Of course I want to." Nietion's eyes flickered and he blurted out. He wanted to improve his abilities even in his dreams. Integrating the heart of rheumatism would definitely help him achieve a breakthrough in his cultivation base. Moreover, his martial body and bloodline power would also experience a qualitative improvement. Judging from Aoi and Chigu's reaction, the heart of rheumatism and the holy rheumatism were closely related. Moreover, the heart of rheumatism was much more powerful than the holy rheumatism. Since the holy rheumatism could greatly improve a martial artist's bloodline power, the heart of rheumatism would undoubtedly improve even more. At that moment, Nietion glanced at Mori Shire and Aoi and Chigu with an unusual look in his eyes. If he wanted to integrate the heart of rheumatism, the two people in front of him would not be so indifferent. Don't worry about them. At most, the three of you will absorb the power of the heart of rheumatism together. We'll see whose bloodline power is more powerful and can integrate more heart of rheumatism, Fat Cat said with a smile when she saw Nietion's worry. Nietion nodded and smiled. It seemed like he had been overthinking if he wanted to enjoy the heart of rheumatism alone. Then, when can I start absorbing the heart of rheumatism? Nietion's eyes flickered as he asked. Now, of course, the Fat Cat squealed and said excitedly, being able to enter the heart of rheumatism is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Let's not waste any more time. All right. Nietion's eyes trembled as he agreed. Without hesitation, he sat down cross-legged and quickly entered into a state of cultivation. Not far away, Mori Shire saw Nietion suddenly sit down cross-legged. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. How could he still be in the mood to cultivate at a time like this? What is he doing? Aoi and Chigu was equally surprised and confused when he saw Nietion's reaction. At this moment, the two of them felt as though they were on the brink of death. Yet, Nietion was leisurely cultivating here. What was going on? A moment later, Mori Shire felt that the aura in the surrounding space seemed to have changed. His expression changed, and he couldn't help but cry out in surprise. What's going on? The aura in the surrounding space is gathering towards that kid. Aoyin Shigu also felt that something was amiss. His eyes flickered with a strange light. I understand now. At this time, Doomsday 12 suddenly came to his senses. His eyes trembled in shock, and he cried out in alarm. Damn it! This kid is integrating the heart of rheumatism. Almost at the same time, Aoyin Shigu came to a realization. His eyes trembled as he squealed like a wild beast. He never thought that Nie Tian was integrating the heart of rheumatism. The heart of rheumatism belonged to the Pardoning Sky clan. It was their sacred relic. Nie Tian was an outsider. What right did he have to integrate the heart of rheumatism? Aoyin Shigu was enraged. His eyes were bloodshot like an angered monkey. However, there was nothing he could do to Nie Tian. At this moment, he couldn't use any of his strength. He couldn't even get close to Nie Tian. There was no way he could stop Nie Tian. Nie Tian, it seems like we'll have to compete, Mori Shire smiled. He glanced at Nie Tian and grinned. Then he sat down in a lotus position and prepared to absorb the power of the heart of rheumatism. Bastard, how dare you? Seeing that Mori Shire was also integrating the heart of rheumatism, Aoyin Shigu became even more enraged. He let out a low growl that turned into an ear-piercing shriek. Idiot, you can continue to scream here. Let's see if the two of us will care about you. Apocalypse 12 glanced coldly at the 7 bones of pardoning heaven, then ignored them and closed his eyes to regulate his breathing, entering a state of cultivation. Aoyin Shigu was furious, but there was nothing he could do about it. He stared at Nie Tian and Mori Shire with his fists clenched tightly. His eyes were so dark that they looked like they were about to drip blood. However, after a while, he calmed down and imitated Nie Tian and Mori Shire. He sat down in a lotus position and closed his eyes to meditate. Mori Shire was right. If he continued to yell, he wouldn't change anything. Instead, he would only benefit Nie Tian and Mori Shire. Now, his last option was also the stupidest one. He would absorb the heart of rheumatism and see if he could win against Nie Tian and Mori Shire. Next, Nie Tian and the other two began to meditate and began to integrate the heart of rheumatism. After a long while, the aura in the air began to change. Streams of light became rhythmic and slowly converged to form 3 light pillars. They appeared on Nie Tian, Mori Shire, and Aoyin Shigu, respectively. The 3 pillars of light were of different sizes. Among them, the one outside of the 7 heaven pardoning bones was the largest, and the one outside of the 12 Armageddon was the smallest. These 2 are even more powerful than I thought. Nie Tian couldn't help but feel surprised as he sensed the pillar of light around him. He also sensed the existence of the other 2 light pillars. They were both stronger than him. Nie Tian, don't worry. This is just the beginning. Fat Cat smiled meaningfully. The size of the light pillar was related to the martial artist's strength. Aoyin Shigu was undoubtedly the strongest. Hence, his light pillar was much bigger than Nie Tian and Mori Shire. Mori Shire's strength was similar to Nie Tian's. His light pillar was only slightly bigger than Nie Tian's. Following this, the light pillar would become bigger and bigger. The speed at which it expanded depended on the martial artist's inherent bloodline. Nie Tian's inherent bloodline was definitely the strongest among the 3. Even Aoyin Shigu's heaven-parting blood, Net, could not be compared to the god fiend original embryo. As expected, the light pillar around Nie Tian and the other 2 became bigger and bigger. Nie Tian's light pillar was growing faster than Aoyin Shigu and Mori Shire's. Nie Tian's light pillar was brighter and more dazzling. This meant that the heart of rheumatism that he absorbed was purer and easier to fuse. How can this kid be so fast? Aoyin Shigu sensed the aura fluctuation around Nie Tian's body. He was shocked and confused. Nie Tian, your bloodline is really strong. Mori Shire was also shocked by Nie Tian's fearsomeness. However, he remained calm and focused on the growth of his light pillar. At this moment, dozens of figures in black appeared in the sky above the abyss. Each of them had a powerful aura. It was obvious that they were all experts. These people were obviously from the Heaven Pardoning clan. One of them was Shi Tianluan, who was in charge of the Sacred Rainbow Rheumatism Gathering. Beside her stood a tall and burly old man. The old man's aura was restrained, but he was like a mountain as he stood there, giving off a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 3987. Shi Tianluan lowered her head and saw the silhouettes of Aoyan Chigu and the others from afar. Her eyes were filled with excitement. However, when her eyes locked onto Tian, the excitement in her eyes was instantly replaced by a raging, murderous intent. She was like a man-eating beast, causing the void around her to vibrate slightly. How could she not know that this silver-haired cultivator was the one who had killed the cultivators of the Pardoning Sky clan? 2 of them. In his heart, there was also a huge shock. She could not imagine how an outsider with only a level 1 heavenly righteousness cultivation could kill the people of the Pardoning Sky clan. When Tian and Morishire teamed up to kill the Pardoning Sky supervisor, Shi Tianluan could not believe her eyes. To her, the scene was too shocking. It even subverted her understanding of martial arts. At that moment, the people of the Pardoning Sky clan looked down into the abyss. When they noticed the rheumatism sacred veins on the surrounding mountain walls, they were extremely excited. They did not expect to discover a sacred vein of rheumatism during the harvesting of sacred rheumatism. As a matter of fact, the Pardoning Sky clan's Flowing Flame sacred vein was already running low due to the constant harvesting of the Flowing Flame sacred vein. Therefore, they had no choice but to rely on outsiders to harvest the Flowing Flame sacred vein for them. To their surprise, the sacred veins of rheumatism were discovered in the sacred ancestral grounds. It was an unexpected surprise. This was especially true for a few older cultivators. When they saw the Flowing Flame sacred vein, their old eyes flashed brilliantly, as if they had regained their youthfulness. They had seen rheumatism's sacred veins when they were young. However, those sacred veins paled in comparison to the one before them. If the sacred vein before them was a huge river, the previous sacred veins were like small ditches that were not even worth mentioning. The amount of sacred rheumatism was enough for the people of the Pardoning Sky clan to use for millions of years. This rheumatism sacred bloodline is the biggest sacred bloodline I have ever seen. At this time, Grand Elder Juqian Wangchuan opened his mouth. His eyes slightly trembled as he said in a heavy voice, "I still remember that when I was still a child, I once followed the previous patriarch to find a very big palace. Rheumatism sacred bloodline. That rheumatism sacred vein is also the largest rheumatism sacred vein that our Pardoning Sky clan has ever discovered. However, the sacred vein we're looking at now is dozens of times bigger than that sacred vein." As he spoke, Juqian Wangchuan's eyes surged with a trace of desire, and his eyes became moist. Dozens of times. When the others heard Juqian Wangchuan's words, their eyes couldn't help but tremble violently. "Grand Elder, with this saint bloodline, our Pardoning Sky clan will have no worries for 1,000,000 years, right?" Someone walked up and said excitedly as he looked at Juqian Wangchuan with trembling eyes. Juqian Wangchuan nodded and said, "At least for 1,000,000 years, we won't need to search for sacred color rheumatism anymore." That's good, that's good. The others were trembling with excitement. To other cultivators, sacred color rheumatism was only something that could increase the power of one's bloodline. However, to the people of the Pardoning Sky clan, sacred color rheumatism was something that could prolong one's life. As one of the 4 great ancient sacred clans, the Pardoning Sky clan's bloodline power was much stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. However, while the Pardoning Sky blood net brought great power to the Pardoning Sky clan's cultivators, it also made them endure unimaginable pressure. Sacred color rheumatism was something that could alleviate the pressure of the Pardoning Sky blood net. Normally, the people of the Pardoning Sky clan needed the help of sacred color rheumatism every time they increased their strength. Otherwise, they might be oppressed to death by the internal pressure of the Pardoning Sky blood net. Therefore, the cultivators of the Pardoning Sky clan actually relied on sacred color rheumatism to increase their strength. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to break through no matter how talented they were. For a cultivator, having an opportunity but not daring to break through was more torturous than death. It was because of this that the Pardoning Sky clan allowed outsiders to enter their ancestral land for the sake of sacred color rheumatism. The ancestral land of a clan had a special meaning to the clan. It was a kind of blasphemy for outsiders to step into the ancestral land. However, the Pardoning Sky clan had no choice but to do this for the sake of sacred color rheumatism. How could they not be excited when such an enormous sacred rheumatism bloodline had appeared in their ancestral land? First Elder, the sacred color rheumatism collection this time was very good. Shi Tianluan looked at Jiu Tian Wangchuan and laughed loudly. Shi Tianluan, you've done well this time. You've made a great contribution. Jiu Tian Wangchuan naturally knew what Shi Tianluan was thinking. He smiled and said, "From now on, you're a member of the Elders' Council." "Thank you, First Elder." Shi Tianluan's eyes flickered as he bowed immediately. He was so excited that his eyeballs almost popped out. He didn't expect the First Elder to be so straightforward and allow him to join the Elders' Council. The First Elder nodded slightly. He was very satisfied with Shi Tianluan's performance this time. "First Elder, we've discovered the sacred rheumatism bloodline. Are these ants that entered the ancestral land?" At that moment, Shi Tianluan's eyes flickered with a sinister look as he gestured to silence them. This fellow was extremely vicious. He actually wanted to silence them after discovering the sacred rheumatism bloodline, and he even wanted to kill all the cultivators that entered the ancestral land. Jiu Tian Wangchuan frowned as his face darkened. He said after a while, "Let me think about it." In the eyes of the Pardoning Heaven clan, the outsiders were no different from ants. However, Jiu Tian Wangchuan knew that the cultivators that entered the ancestral land were all peak geniuses from various large factions in the all-heaven sacred world. There were even a few people with impressive statuses among them. If he killed all of them, it would be equivalent to offending the entire all-heaven sacred world. Even if the Pardoning Heaven clan did not fear any faction in the all-heaven sacred world, it would still be very troublesome if they really fought to the death. Jiu Tian Wangchuan was very hesitant when he thought about that. "First Elder, what do you think that is?" At that moment, a cultivator from the Pardoning Heaven clan suddenly discovered something. His eyes flickered as he exclaimed, Wangchuan furrowed his brows, after which his gaze focused on the white orb at the bottom of the abyss. His eyes trembled as his aged face stiffened. His lips twitched as though he wanted to say something, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't utter a single word. Chapter 3988. The Heart of Rheumatism. The crowd's eyes widened when they heard Jiu Tian Wangchuan's words, before they were left in a daze, as if they were petrified. The white light orb was the legendary heart of rheumatism. The heart of rheumatism, something that only existed in legends, had actually appeared. To the people of the Pardoning Sky clan, the heart of rheumatism was like a legend, a myth. It was said that the sacred rheumatism originated from the heart of rheumatism. The heart of rheumatism. It must be the heart of rheumatism. A while later, Jiu Tian Wangchuan collected his thoughts. His eyes flickered with excitement, as if he was a little kid on the verge of jumping up and down. The crowd collected their thoughts and stared at their First Elder in astonishment. At that moment, Jiu Tian Wangchuan no longer had the dignity of a First Elder, as if he had forgotten his place. It really is the heart of rheumatism. No wonder the sacred rheumatism veins here are so huge. Shi Tianluan's eyes flickered as he blurted out in astonishment. "First Elder, look at Ao Yin Chigu and the others. What are they doing?" At that instant, someone noticed something and blurted out with a confused expression, "The light pillars on their bodies. What's that?" "Shit." Jiu Tian Wangchuan's eyes flickered as he came to a realization, causing his expression to change drastically as he uttered a strange cry. "They are merging the heart of rheumatism. This." The others were shocked and immediately became sluggish, unable to react for a long time. They did not expect that Ao Yin Chigu and the others were merging the heart of rheumatism. The heart of rheumatism was the most important thing to the Pardoning Sky clan. How could it be merged so easily? Forget about Out Yin Shigu. The other two were outsiders. Who did they think they were? Great Elder, I'll go kill those two ants. At this moment, Shi Tianluan let out a low roar as she took a step forward. Her aura burst forth crazily as her entire body transformed into a gigantic bird as she dove towards the bottom of the abyss. Bang! But right at this moment, a muffled sound resounded, and Shi Tianluan was directly sent flying, leaving behind a line of blood in the air. What's going on? He steadied himself and cried out in shock. He had no idea what was going on. It's the protective shield of the heart of rheumatism. Jiutian Wangchuan frowned. His face was filled with shock as he froze again. Protective barrier? Shi Tianluan cried out in surprise. Her eyes trembled. Only then did she realize that there was actually a faint halo in the void. Just now, it was that layer of light that had directly sent him flying backwards. Great Elder, what's going on with this protective barrier? Shi Tianluan's body moved, and she arrived beside Jiutian Wangchuan and asked in a low voice. Jiutian Wangchuan's face was gloomy, and he looked much older than before. He sighed and said, "If the heart of rheumatism is attacked, it will automatically activate a layer of protective barrier to isolate itself from the outside world." This. Shi Tianluan's face froze, and he asked in shock, "Does this mean that we can't get close to them?" Jiutian Wangchuan nodded and said, "The protective barrier of the heart of rheumatism is something that even the clan leader can't break through." This. Shi Tianluan let out a gasp as her entire body froze again. Tian and the others were right in front of them, but they couldn't get close to them. They could only watch. What should they do? Great Elder, don't tell me that we can only watch from the outside. A cultivator frowned and asked solemnly. Jiutian Wangchuan frowned deeply and nodded helplessly. They had no other choice but to stand guard here. I don't believe that a mere layer of protective barrier can be that strong. At that moment, an old man growled and his figure moved instantly. He slammed his palm forward and the shadow of the palm was like a mountain. Bang! However, the moment the shadow of the palm landed, there was only a dull thud before it collapsed. That layer of protective barrier seemed to be only a thin layer, but it was completely indestructible. The protective barrier of the heart of rheumatism isolated Tian and the others, not allowing anyone to get close. Don't waste your energy. The man steadied himself and wanted to attack again, but he was stopped by Jiutian Wangchuan. Great Elder, the man growled, obviously unwilling to give up. It's useless. Jiutian Wangchuan shook his head helplessly. Those two be asterisk stars. Shi Tianluan looked at Tian and Mori Shire's figures and roared crazily. When they come out, I'll tear them into pieces. Jiutian Wangchuan looked at Shi Tianluan but didn't say anything. They had no other choice but to wait here. Great Elder, please don't worry. As soon as they come out of the protective barrier, I'll definitely kill them. Shi Tianluan looked at Jiutian Wangchuan and said in a low voice. Jiutian Wangchuan ignored him and turned to an old man behind him. Old 7, go back to the clan and let the clan leader handle this personally. Yes, the old man replied. Then, his silhouette flickered and he left. Jiutian Wangchuan watched as the old man's figure disappeared. His eyes were filled with tears as he said in a sorrowful tone, Heavens, 2 outsiders have merged with the heart of rheumatism. Is it God's will to annihilate the Pardoning Sky clan? The others were startled when they saw Jiutian Wangchuan's reaction. Shi Tianluan's gaze became even more ferocious as a murderous aura was about to burst out. He had made up his mind to kill Tian and Mori Shire when they came out. At the same time, within the space of the heart of rheumatism, Tian and the other two were still quietly merging with the heart of rheumatism. Meanwhile, the light pillar on Tian's body had surpassed Mori Shire's and was catching up to Out Yin Shigu's. Judging from the trend, he would soon surpass Out Yin Shigu. What is this kid's bloodline power? Why is it so terrifying? Out Yin Shigu was shocked as he sensed the aura flowing around Tian's body. He could not believe that an outsider's bloodline power was more terrifying than his, a genius of the Pardoning Sky clan. Meanwhile, Nietion's aura skyrocketed as he absorbed the power of the Heart of Rheumatism, showing signs of breaking through the second layer heavenly righteousness. Nietion, hold on, don't break through now. Fat Cat's voice was heard all of a sudden. Nietion nodded. Of course, he knew that this was the time for him to build his foundation. The more stable his foundation was, the more beneficial it would be for his future growth. Boom! But at this moment, a surge of aura shot into the sky, causing the surrounding space to tremble. This guy broke through first. Nietion's heart skipped a beat, and he laughed. It turned out that Maury Shire broke through first. Actually, Maury Shire had absorbed the least amount of the Heart of Rheumatism among the three. But he was the first to break through. This meant that his martial arts foundation was far from Nietion's, let alone Audiobook's. Audiobook's cultivation was at the 9th layer of heavenly righteousness. He was at a bottleneck, and it would not be easy for him to break through. At this moment, Maury Shire let out a weird cry and opened his eyes. Chapter 3989. Someone's there. When Nietion heard Maury Shire's words, his eyes trembled and his expression changed. He could not react in time. What did Maury Shire mean when he said that there was someone in the heart of rheumatism? Could it be that someone was living in the heart of rheumatism? Yes, Maury Shire replied in a deep voice. There's a soul in the heart of rheumatism. Divine soul? Nietion frowned as he was deeply shocked. He could not imagine that there was a soul in the white ball of light. Are you sure? Nietion was still in disbelief and asked in a deep voice. I'm sure, Maury Shire said in a deep voice. When I broke through just now, I sensed the existence of the soul. It seems that the soul has merged with the heart of rheumatism. Nietion's heart sank, and he was even more shocked. If the soul had merged with the heart of rheumatism, wouldn't they merge with the soul when they merged with the heart of rheumatism? If that was the case, wouldn't it be a case of possession? Nietion, don't think too much. Merging with the heart of rheumatism is more important, Fat Cat said in a deep voice. Yes, Nietion agreed, and focused on absorbing the heart of rheumatism. Maury Shire calmed down and continued to absorb the heart of rheumatism. High up in the sky, Zhuqian Wangchuan and the rest watched Nietion and the rest absorb the heart of rheumatism, but they could do nothing about it. Boom! After a long time, the light pillar outside of Nietion's body suddenly expanded and a terrifying aura soared into the sky. This kid has broken through. When Zhuqian Wangchuan saw this scene, his deep eyes trembled slightly, and his old face revealed a gloomy expression. A cultivator from another race actually managed to make a breakthrough by absorbing the heart of rheumatism. As the first elder of the Pardoning Heaven clan, how could he not feel pained and frustrated? Grand Elder, the light pillar around this ant's body is bigger than Audiobook's. Why is that? Shi Tianluan could not help but ask as if she had noticed something. Yeah, why is that? The others were equally puzzled and asked one after another. Zhuqian Wangchuan's expression was dark as he said, according to this old man's observation, the pillars of light around their bodies should be related to their strength and bloodline latent abilities. The higher your strength and bloodline talent, the bigger the pillar of light. Shi Tianluan's eyes flickered as he blurted out in astonishment. Audiobook's strength is much stronger than that kid, but his light pillar isn't as big as the kid's. Could it be? He didn't finish his sentence because he thought it would be too shocking. That's because the silver-haired cultivator's bloodline latent ability is much stronger than Audiobook's. Zhuqian Wangchuan's eyes darkened as he said what Shi Tianluan wanted to say. How is this possible? Shi Tianluan exclaimed with a blank expression. Grand Elder, that's impossible. The others were in disbelief too. One of them blurted out in astonishment. The Pardoning Heaven bloodline of our Pardoning Heaven clan is an ancient sacred bloodline. That kid is just an outsider. How could he possess a bloodline stronger than the Pardoning Heaven bloodline? That's right. Audiobook is one of the top 5 super geniuses of our clan in the past 1,000,000 years. How could a mere outsider's bloodline be stronger than Aoyan Chigu's? Another person chimed in. The truth is right in front of us. We have no choice but to believe it. Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes darkened. He too was unwilling to believe the scene before him, but he could not doubt what he had seen with his own eyes. The cultivators of the Pardoning Heaven clan fell silent as the atmosphere turned gloomy. Perhaps our Pardoning Heaven clan has been in seclusion for too long, and a stronger bloodline has appeared in the new world of martial arts. After a while, Zhu Wangchuan let out a long sigh with a helpless expression. Under normal circumstances, the power of a bloodline would become thinner and weaker with each generation. However, under special circumstances, cultivators with powerful bloodlines could also appear or even create a brand new and stronger bloodline through a fortuitous encounter. At least, the power of Nietian's bloodline was something that Jiutian Wangchuan had never seen before, and it made him feel threatened. At that moment, Jiutian Wangchuan's gaze toward Nietian was filled with chilling, killing intent. He had already made up his mind to kill Nietian and the others once they were done assimilating the heart of rheumatism. Nietian's bloodline talent was too terrifying. A person like him must not be allowed to escape. Great Elder, this is the person who killed the cultivators of our Pardoning Heaven clan. Shi Tianluan's eyes flickered as she sensed Jiutian Wangchuan's killing intent. She said, "This person's bloodline is so terrifying, we must not let him live." Jiutian Wangchuan nodded grimly. The killing intent in his eyes intensified, and it was suffocating. At the same time, in the heart of rheumatism, Nietian absorbed the power of the heart of rheumatism and successfully ushered in a breakthrough. His aura was much stronger than before, and the light pillar outside his body grew larger. At the same time, the white ball of light below was becoming smaller and smaller. Compared to before, it had shrunk by a size. Tan, Mori Shire, and Aoyan Chigu absorbed the heart of rheumatism at the same time, causing the power to weaken. There's really a spirit in the heart of rheumatism. At that moment, Nietian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in shock. The moment he broke through, he sensed a slumbering spirit in the core of the heart of rheumatism. Although the feeling was only for an instant, he was certain of the spirit's existence. However, his perception of the spirit was only for an instant, so he could not judge how strong the spirit was. Let's not worry about that for now. Absorbing the heart of rheumatism is the most important thing now. After a while, Nietian became cold and thought to himself, there was no point in worrying now. It was better to focus on absorbing the heart of rheumatism. Next, Nietian and the other two absorbed the heart of rheumatism and entered a peaceful stage. The light pillar outside their bodies no longer increased, but the speed at which their martial bodies absorbed the heart of rheumatism increased. In the blink of an eye, a few days had passed. Boom! At that moment, Aoyan Chigu's body shook violently. Suddenly, a huge aura surged into the sky, causing the surrounding void to tremble. After such a long period of absorption and fusion, he finally broke through from the 9th tier of heavenly righteousness to the 1st tier of heavenly calamity realm. The difference between the 9th tier of heavenly righteousness and the 1st tier of heavenly calamity realm was like heaven and earth. To any martial artist, going from the heavenly righteousness realm to the heavenly calamity realm was a huge bottleneck. The heavenly righteousness realm was previously a mortal saint realm. Only after stepping into the heavenly calamity realm did he truly reach the supreme saint realm. Therefore, even without Yin Chigu's talent, it still took him a few days to complete the breakthrough. If not for the opportunity to absorb the heart of rheumatism, it would have taken him at least a few years to break through to the heavenly calamity realm. Chapter 3990. Ancestor Shui Luo. These 4 words came out of Xie Tian Chigu's mouth. His voice wasn't loud, but Xie Tian Wangchuan and the others heard it clearly. Upon hearing the name of Ancestor Shui Luo, Xie Tian, Wangchuan, and the others were stunned at the same time. Their expressions turned sluggish, as though they had been petrified. They did not expect Aoyin Shigu to say the name Ancestor Shueluo. Heaven parting 7 bones. What are you talking about? In the next moment, heaven parting Wang Chuan reacted, and he roared loudly. Grand Elder! Aoyin Shigu's eyes flickered as he looked at Jiutian Wangchuan in the sky. His eyes were still blank as he said, Ancestor Shueluo, he's in the heart of rheumatism. What did you say? Jiutian Wangchuan's expression changed once again as he roared like a wild beast. He could not believe what Aoyin Shigu had just said. Grand Elder, it's the Ancestor. The Ancestor's soul is in the heart of rheumatism. Aoyin Shigu calmed down and said loudly. This? Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes flickered as his aged face froze once again. He could not react for a long time. The others were similarly shocked, and their faces were filled with astonishment. Who would have thought that Ancestor Shueluo's soul was in the heart of rheumatism? After a while, Shi Tianlun was the first to speak as she looked at Jiutian Wangchuan and asked, Grand Elder, do you think what Aoyin Shigu said is true? Rumor has it that Ancestor Shueluo had merged with the heart of rheumatism to obtain the blood meridian of pardoning heaven. Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes trembled as he forced himself to calm down and said, Ancestor Shueluo is the ancestor of our pardoning heaven clan. He's the ancestor of our clan. All members of the Pardon Sky clan are descendants of Ancestor Shue overarching. If the rumors are true, and Ancestor Shueluo really became Heaven's Pardon Shueluo with the heart of rheumatism, then the divine soul in the heart of rheumatism is most likely Ancestor Shueluo. This! The eyes of the others trembled, and they were stunned on the spot. They were completely speechless. It turned out that the heart of rheumatism contained the divine soul of their Pardon Sky clan's ancestor. How could they not be shocked? So that divine soul belonged to Ancestor Shueluo. Yet Tian's heart sank when he heard Aoyin Shigu's words. He didn't expect the divine soul of the heart of rheumatism to be an ancestor of the Pardon Sky clan. If Ancestor Shueluo wanted to borrow a body to be reborn later, he and Mori Shire would probably be the first to be considered for possession. Boom! At that instant, the glowing white orb trembled strangely, unleashing a tremendous aura of the divine soul, causing the space inside the heart of rheumatism to tremble. Nye Tian's heart sank when he sensed the fluctuation of the divine soul. Ancestor Shueluo's divine soul has awakened. At the same time, Mori Shire sensed it too, causing him to open his eyes and exclaim, It's awake! I've waited for so many years. Finally, someone has found the heart of rheumatism. At that instant, a deep, vigorous voice was heard, which echoed throughout the abyss like a clap of thunder. This! Nye Tian's expression sank, and he finally opened his eyes. He looked down and saw that outside the blazing white ball of light, there was a faint shadow. The face of that silhouette was not very clear. However, one could tell that it was an old man who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Eyebrows furrowed, Nye Tian thought to himself, Is the possession I've been worrying about finally going to happen? Aoyin Shigu of the Pardoning Sky clan greets the ancestor. At this moment, Pardoning Heaven's 7 bones reacted and bowed down towards the illusory figure respectfully. You've reached the heavenly tribulation realm at the age of 17. Not bad. Ancestor Shueluo looked at Aoyin Shigu and laughed, seemingly satisfied. 17 years old. Nye Tian frowned, feeling shocked. It turned out that Aoyin Shigu was only 17 years old. Previously, he had guessed that Aoyin Shigu was 20 years old, but it seemed that he had underestimated Aoyin Shigu. Thank you for your compliment, Ancestor. Aoyin Shigu expressed his gratitude excitedly. It was the greatest honor of his life to be recognized by his ancestor. At that moment, Ancestor Shueluo suddenly looked at Nye Tian and Mori Shire, and his face sank, causing the atmosphere to become tense. Nye Tian and Mori Shire looked at each other without saying a word. The two of you aren't from the Pardoning Sky clan? Ancestor Shueluo stared at Nye Tian and Mori Shire for a long time before he finally spoke with an extremely cold tone. No. Nye Tian furrowed his brows and nodded in response. Now that ancestor, Shuel Luo's divine soul had awakened, they wouldn't be able to escape if anything were to happen next, so they might as well face it calmly. Kid, do you know where you are? Who am I? The patriarch standing in front of you. Ancestor Shuel Luo said with a deep voice. His eyes were fixed on Yetian, as if he was looking at something with interest. This is the ancestral land of the ancient sacred. We are now in the inner space of the heart of rheumatism. As for you, you are the ancestor of the pardoning sky clan, Yetian said with a calm expression. Kid, since you know, why are you so calm? Ancestor Shuel Luo's voice was deep and threatening. I'm already standing here. What else can I do? Nyetian smiled and said directly, Senior, if you want to take over my body and be reborn, go ahead. But I won't cooperate with you. I will resist until the end, and your divine soul might be devoured by me. Take over? Devoured? Hearing Nyetian's words, Ancestor Shuel Luo burst into laughter, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world, and said, Little boy, you underestimate this ancestor too much. Do you think this ancestor left a wisp of his soul in the flowing flame heart just to possess it and be reborn? Nyetian was startled. He frowned and asked, Isn't that the case? Under normal circumstances, some old monsters would temporarily store their divine soul in a certain place when their lifespan was near. They would wait for an unlucky person to come and then take over their body and be reborn. Nyetian had encountered this a few times. Could it be that this time was an exception and Ancestor Shuel Luo's divine soul wasn't to be reborn? Kid, I know my destiny. I'm not interested in taking over your body and being reborn. Ancestor Shuel Luo looked at Nyetian and suddenly laughed. I left this part of my divine soul to remind those who come after me. What do you mean? Nyetian frowned and couldn't help but feel puzzled. Ancestor Shuel Luo laughed heartily and said, You three brats are quite bold. You're not strong, but you're brave. With your current strength, merging with the heart of rheumatism is courting death. Chapter 3991. What do you mean? Nyetian frowned and exclaimed after hearing Ancestor Shuel Luo's words. His eyes were filled with a hint of doubt. He was worried that Ancestor Shuel Luo was trying to trick him. Ancestor Shuel Luo looked at Nyetian and chuckled. He seemed to have sensed the latter's doubt and said, The power contained in the heart of rheumatism isn't something you can imagine. Back then, when I merged with the heart of rheumatism, I already had the cultivation of the Tianjua Sacred Emperor. But it's a pity that I was too hasty. Although I managed to merge with the heart of rheumatism in the end, the heaven-pardoning blood lineage still had a fatal flaw. Then, Ancestor Shuel Luo looked at Outyin Shigu and said, Kid, you should know the flaw of the heaven-pardoning blood lineage very well, right? Outyin Shigu frowned and wore an unpleasant expression, but he still nodded and said, Ancestor, the heaven-pardoning blood lineage is too powerful. The heart-burning pain is too terrifying. Terrifying? Ancestor Shuel Luo chuckled and said, Compared to the pain I endured in the past, the heart-burning pain you're enduring is nothing but enjoyment. Outyin Shigu frowned and did not know what to say. Although Ancestor Shuel Luo was the ancestor of the heaven-pardoning blood lineage, he had lived a long time ago. Not many people in the heaven-pardoning blood lineage knew about him. Kid, although you're not from the heaven-pardoning blood lineage, your bloodline talent is stronger than the heaven-pardoning blood lineage of the heaven-pardoning blood lineage. It's beyond my expectation. At that moment, Ancestor Shuel Luo turned his gaze to Nyetian and said with a smile, I didn't expect the later generations to have such a powerful bloodline. You're flattering me, Senior. You're flattering me, Senior. Nyetian smiled and bowed. However, he had yet to figure out what Ancestor Shuel Luo was trying to do. The heart of rheumatism can greatly strengthen the bloodline power and can even create a new bloodline. Ancestor Shuel Luo laughed and said, I'm looking forward to seeing how powerful your bloodline power will be after you merge with the heart of rheumatism. So, Senior wants me to fuse with the flowing flame heart? The corners of Nyetian's mouth twitched slightly as he asked in a half-probing manner. Ancestor Shuel Luo seemed to want him to merge with the Ancestor Shuel Luo. In terms of bloodline talent, you are indeed more qualified to fuse with the flowing flame heart. Shuel Luo Old Ancestor laughed and said, but your current strength is too weak. If you forcibly fuse with the flowing flame heart, I'm afraid you will be burnt to ashes by it. Young man, I can temporarily seal the heart of rheumatism and give it to you. Ancestor Shuel Luo laughed and said, young man, I can temporarily seal the heart of rheumatism and give it to you. Ancestor Shuel Luo laughed, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Give it to me. Nye Tian frowned and was stunned. He thought he had heard it wrong. Yes, I'm giving it to you. Ancestor Shuel Luo nodded and said, but I have a condition. What condition? Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. He wondered what condition Ancestor Shuel Luo would set for a treasure like the Heart of Rheumatism. You can take the Heart of Rheumatism with you, but you have to be the High Priest of the Pardon Sky clan, Ancestor Shuel Luo said solemnly. Nye Tian frowned when he heard this. He could not help but laugh and said, Senior, is this a condition? What he meant was that becoming the High Priest of the Pardon Sky clan did not sound like a condition, but a benefit. Of course. Ancestor Shuel Luo smiled and said, and you have to accept this condition. At this moment, before Nye Tian could say anything, Pardoning Heaven Seven Bones shouted angrily, Patriarch, this kid is an outsider and has killed members of our Pardoning Heaven clan. How can he be our High Priestess? He did not expect Ancestor Shuel Luo to want Nye Tian to be the High Priest of the Pardon Sky clan. There was a High Priest in the Pardon Sky clan a long time ago. However, there had been no High Priest in the recent hundreds of thousands of years. Furthermore, the status of the High Priest of the Pardoning Heaven clan was on par with that of the clan chief and the Great Elder. The Pardon Sky clan had always only respected experts who could be the High Priest. It was impossible for a young martial artist from another clan to be the High Priest of the Pardon Sky clan. Shut up. Ancestor Shuel Luo frowned and glared at Ao Yinshigu. He growled in a cold tone. Ao Yinshigu suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill. He shrank back in fear and did not dare to speak. How about it, young man? Are you willing to accept my suggestion? Ancestor Shuel Luo looked at Nye Tian and asked in a loud voice, do I have a choice? Nye Tian said with a calm smile on his face. Although he did not know why Ancestor Shuel Luo wanted him to be the High Priest of the Pardon Sky clan, it was not his style not to take advantage of such an opportunity. Very well. Ancestor Shuel Luo nodded and smiled. He looked up into the sky and asked, is the clan leader of the Pardon Sky clan here? High up in the sky, Xie Tian Wangchuan's expression changed. He hurriedly took a step forward, bowed, and said, Old Ancestor, Lord Clan Chief, is still in the clan. This junior is the Parting Heavenly Clan's Grand Elder, Xie Tian Wangchuan. If Old Ancestor has any orders, please do not hesitate to tell me. The Great Elder is fine too. Ancestor Shuel Luo nodded and raised his arm. Come over first. Yes. Jiuqian Wangchuan replied. He tried to walk over and found that the layer of shield had disappeared. Yet Tian and the others also noticed that the atmosphere around them had changed. They were no longer in a state of weightlessness. Ancestor Jiuqian Wangchuan landed and bowed deeply to Ancestor Shuel Luo respectfully. As the Ancestor of the Pardon Sky clan, I now appoint this little brother as the Great Priest of the Pardon Sky clan. Do you agree? Ancestor Shuel Luo asked directly. Patriarch this. Wangchuan's gaze swept over Nye Tian as he said with a troubled expression, Patriarch, you might not know this, but the Pardon Heaven clan hasn't had a high priest for a long time, so you don't agree? Ancestor Shuel Luo's face sank as his voice was filled with a sense of oppression, after which a strange aura surged in the air, as though formless ripples were forming. Ancestor, I just feel that an outsider is not suitable to be the Great Priest of the Pardon Sky clan. Jiuqian Wangchuan felt the strange ripples in the air, and his expression changed. He nervously said, Ancestor, why don't you appoint someone else? As long as it's someone from the Pardon Sky clan, I will not object. Chapter 3992. Boom! As soon as Ancestor Shuel Luo spoke, a strange aura surged out of Jutian Wangchuan's body. It was like a flame, making him look like he was on fire. Ah! The next moment, Jutian Wangchuan screamed in pain. His face was distorted, and it was extremely terrifying. It was hard to imagine what kind of pain could make a Sky Martial Saint ancestor react in such a way. Ao Yin Shigu and the others were stunned by the scene in front of them. They were dumbfounded and could not say a word. What did Ancestor Shuel Luo do to make Jutian Wangchuan suffer so much? One should know that Ancestor Shuel Luo was only a godly spirit. Old Ancestor. At this moment, Pardoning Heaven Wangchuan endured the intense pain and yelled out. Ancestor Shuel Luo frowned, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Suddenly, the strange fluctuation in the void disappeared. After a long time, Jutian Wangchuan finally returned to normal. His eyes were still trembling, and it was obvious that he still had lingering fears. At that moment, he felt the pain of his heart being burned. The pain of his body and soul being torn apart made him go crazy. Nie Tian frowned. He had also felt the fluctuation just now. It seemed that Ancestor Shuel Luo had released some kind of bloodline fluctuation and triggered the heart-burning pain of Jutian Wangchuan's Pardoning Heaven bloodline. I'll ask you one last time. Do you agree to what I said just now? Ancestor Shuel Luo's face was gloomy and cold. Yes. Jutian Wangchuan's face turned ugly. Finally, he nodded and said, Ancestor, I would like to know why. Because he is the person who can solve the problem of the Pardoning Heaven bloodline. Ancestor Shuel Luo said, Is this reason enough? Him? Jutian Wangchuan's eyes trembled, and he looked at Nie Tian in disbelief. Ancestor Shuel Luo said with a gloomy face, Jutian Wangchuan, listen carefully. From now on, this little brother is the high priest of Pardon Heaven. If he dies, our Pardoning Heaven clan will be destroyed. Understand? This. Jutian Wangchuan's face stiffened. He was at a loss for words. Let me ask you, do you understand? Patriarch Shuel Luo roared out in a low voice. His eyes looked as though they could shoot out flames. I understand. Jutian Wangchuan quickly responded. It's good that you understand. Ancestor Shuel Luo nodded, then looked at Nie Tian and asked, Little brother, what's your name? Nie Tian. Nie Tian replied calmly. Yes. Ancestor Shuel Luo nodded slightly and said, I am a man of my words. I will seal your rheumatism heart now. I hope you will keep your promise and remember your identity as the high priest of Pardon Heaven. Following that, Ancestor Shuel Luo's illusionary figure shook slightly and turned into runes that surged into the heart of rheumatism. Nie Tian frowned with a strange expression. It seemed like the identity of the high priest of Pardon Heaven was not as simple as he thought. At that instant, the heart of rheumatism slowly shrunk and its radiance dimmed. In the blink of an eye, it was only the size of a baby's fist, and the radiance disappeared, turning it into a dull gray stone. At the same time, the aura of Ancestor Shuel Luo's divine soul completely disappeared. The ancestor of the Pardoning Heaven clan, who had created a legendary figure of the ancient sacred clan, had passed away. Ancestor. Jutian Wangchuan's eyes trembled as he cried out in grief and knelt down. Following that, Ao Yin Shigu, Shi Tianluan, and the others also knelt down in grief. Ancestor. No matter what, Ancestor Shuel Luo was their ancestor. It went without saying that they did not feel good witnessing the death of their ancestor. Nie Tian nodded his head slightly and bowed toward the heart of rheumatism. A moment later, Jutian Wangchuan and the others rose to their feet. Their gazes were focused on Nie Tian with strange expressions. Nie Tian frowned when he sensed the hostility in the eyes of Jutian Wangchuan and the others. He let out a wry smile and said, Are you guys going to kill me, the high priest of Pardon Heaven, as soon as your ancestor has passed away? Who do you think you are? How dare an ant be the high priest of our Pardoning Heaven clan? You're dreaming. Shi Tianluan let out a deep roar and charged toward Nie Tian while yelling, I'm going to kill you today. Nie Tian frowned as his expression changed tremendously. Shi Tianluan's aura was too powerful. The earth-shattering attack was not something he could resist. Bang! However, right at this moment, an enormous force appeared, and it actually blasted Xie Tianluan back. Shi Tianluan stabilized his figure and stared at Zhu Tian Wangchuan in astonishment as he yelled, "Great Elder!" It was Zhu Tian Wangchuan who had stopped him. He did not expect that. Previously, Zhu Tian Wangchuan had a strong desire to kill Nie Tian, yet he had stopped him. Was he really going to admit that Nie Tian was the high priest of Pardon Heaven? Stand down for now. Zhu Tian Wangchuan glanced at Shi Tianluan and said in a deep voice, "Yes." Although Shi Tianluan was unwilling, he still agreed and obediently retreated to the side. Next, Zhu Tian Wangchuan took a step forward and looked at Nie Tian strangely, as if he was trying to verify something. "Great Elder, it doesn't matter if you accept it or not. I'm already the high priest of the Pardon Heaven tribe." Nie Tian looked at Zhu Tian Wangchuan and said with a faint smile, "Don't tell me you've forgotten what Ancestor Shui Luo said so quickly." "Kid, I clearly remember what the ancestor said. I don't need you to remind me." Zhu Tian Wangchuan's expression was dark and cold. "If it wasn't for the ancestor, you'd be dead by now." "What about now?" Nie Tian smiled and said, "Are you going to admit my identity or kill me?" "Brat, whether or not you can become the high priest is not something that I can decide alone." Zhu Tian Wangchuan smiled coldly and said, "Let me tell you, even if you really become the great priest of the Pardon Heaven, you won't be able to take away the heart of rheumatism." "Oh." The corner of Nie Tian's lips twitched as he let out a chuckle. It seemed that things were not as simple as he thought. Even if the people of the Pardon Heaven tribe were afraid of Ancestor Shui Luo's words, they would not allow an outsider to take away the heart of rheumatism. "Great Elder, the Patriarch is here." At that moment, someone shouted and looked into the sky. "Very good." Pardoning Heaven Wangchuan raised his head and a smile appeared on his face. He was waiting for the Patriarch to arrive in person before he could make a decision. He was very worried about Ancestor Shui Luo's words. If Nie Tian died, would the Pardon Heaven tribe really be destroyed? Chapter 3993. Zhu Tian Wangchuan had many doubts in his heart, which was why he did not dare to let Shi Tianluan kill Nie Tian. If Nie Tian was really important to the Parting Sky clan, if Nie Tian could truly resolve the bloodline defect of the Parting Sky clan, if the Parting Sky clan was really heading toward destruction because of Nie Tian's death, then he, Zhu Tian Wangchuan, would become the eternal sinner of the Parting Sky clan. He could not afford to bear such a crime. The arrival of the Parting Sky clan's patriarch made him feel much more at ease. Next, he would inform the patriarch of the Parting Sky clan of everything and let the patriarch make the final decision. Grand Elder. The patriarch of the Parting Sky clan, Xie Tian Ichi, descended like a mountain, causing the surrounding space to sink and the world to seem minuscule. Xie Tian Ichi looked much younger than Zhu Tian Wangchuan and had the appearance of a middle-aged man. His figure was more burly than Zhu Tian Wangchuan, standing over 2 meters tall. He wore a green robe and exuded the aura of a grandmaster. Lord Patriarch. Xie Tian Wangchuan bowed slightly. A glint flashed in his eyes as he nodded slightly. Then, he told Xie Tian Ichi everything that had happened earlier in full detail. Xie Tian Ichi frowned as he listened to Zhu Tian Wangchuan's words. His gaze swept across Nie Tian several times. "Is what you said true?" Xie Tian Ichi frowned and asked in a deep voice after Zhu Tian Wangchuan's words. "Lord Patriarch, this concerns the future of the Parting Sky clan. This old man does not dare to lie." Zhu Tian Wangchuan's expression tensed up as he said in a deep voice. Progenitor Shui Luo's words concerned the survival of the Parting Sky clan. Thus, Zhu Tian Wangchuan naturally did not dare to lie. "Are you sure that the person you saw was the progenitor?" Xie Tian Ichi's expression was dark, clearly still worried. "I'm sure." Zhu Tian Wangchuan nodded his head firmly. If that spirit wasn't Patriarch Shui Luo, how could it have appeared in the heart of rheumatism and triggered the heart-burning pain of the Heaven's Pardon blood net in his body? Xie Tian Ichi's gaze suddenly trembled, and he instantly fell into deep thought. The others all looked at Xie Tian Ichi, not daring to speak. Lord Patriarch, how should we deal with him? After a long time, Zhuqian Wangchuan couldn't help but ask when he saw that Xiet Tian Ichi hadn't said anything. The him he was referring to was, of course, Niet Tian. Xiet Tian Ichi's face was gloomy, but he still didn't say anything. Niet Tian was indeed very difficult to deal with, and Xiet Tian Ichi had the same concerns of his heart. Little brother, your name is Niet Tian, right? After a while, Xiet Tian Ichi finally spoke, and his gaze towards Niet Tian carried a trace of a strange light. The corner of Niet Tian's lips twitched, but he didn't say anything and only nodded his head. Congratulations on officially becoming the great priest of the Heaven Pardon clan. Xiet Tian Ichi nodded his head slightly and forced a smile on his face as he spoke in a deep voice. In the end, he decided that Niet Tian couldn't be killed casually. Since he couldn't kill Niet Tian, he could only acknowledge Niet Tian's identity for now. After all, this was Patriarch Shuai Luo's will. Thank you, Lord Patriarch. Niet Tian wasn't surprised by Xiet Tian Ichi's decision, and he responded with a faint smile. However, the other members of the Heaven Pardon clan had a change in expression, and their gazes towards Niet Tian were filled with dense hostility. It was obvious that they didn't want to have a great priest from another clan. Moreover, he was a weakling that they viewed as an ant. Lord Patriarch, isn't it a little inappropriate to let such a little kid be the great priest of Heaven Pardon clan? At this moment, an elder walked up and said, "We can spare his life, but we don't necessarily have to let him be the great priest. This is a joint decision made by me and the great elder. Do you have any objections?" Xiet Tian Ichi's expression sank as he spoke in a cold tone. The elder's expression stiffened, and he couldn't help but look at Zhuqian Wangchuan. Lord Patriarch's decision is my decision. Zhuqian Wangchuan took a step forward and spoke in a clear voice. Xiet Tian Ichi nodded his head. Previously, Zhuqian Wangchuan didn't kill Niet Tian, which meant that he had already made up his mind. He was just waiting for the Patriarch's affirmation and support. When the others saw this, they didn't dare to say anything no matter how unwilling they were. Since the two most influential people of the Heaven Pardon clan had acknowledged Niet Tian, it was useless for them to say anything else. If that's the case, we will respect the Lord Patriarch and the Great Elder's decision. An elder walked up and nodded. He then bowed to Niet Tian and said solemnly, "Greetings, Great Priest. Greetings, Great Priest." When the others saw this, they all bowed to Niet Tian. Even Shi Tianluan and Ao Yin Chigu, who were the most unwilling, had no choice but to follow suit. "Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous. Please rise." Niet Tian was startled by the scene before him. He smiled and raised his hand. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. Then, Niet Tian shifted his gaze and locked onto the heart of rheumatism. Since the Heaven Pardon clan had acknowledged his identity, the heart of rheumatism should belong to him. Great Elder, since the heart of rheumatism has been sealed by the ancestor, we will temporarily keep it in the clan. We will look after it on behalf of the great priest. At that moment, Xiet Tian Ichi smiled and said loudly, "Yes." Zhuqian Wangchuan responded. Then his body moved and his hand reached out to grab the heart of rheumatism. He then returned to Xiet Tian Ichi's side. "Lord Patriarch, what is the meaning of this?" Niet Tian frowned and his expression darkened. He didn't expect Xiet Tian Ichi to do this. "High Priestess, we're already a family anyway. Since the heart of rheumatism has been sealed, it's useless for you to keep it with you. It's not safe. Why don't we look after it for you? One day, when you feel that you are strong enough to fuse with the heart of rheumatism, you can ask us for it." Great Priest, Xiet Tian Ichi smiled calmly. Hearing this, Niet Tian frowned. This guy was obviously worried about letting the flowing flame heart fall into the hands of outsiders, yet he still spoke in such a dignified manner. Truly shameless. However, Xiet Tian Ichi was right about one thing. It was not safe for Niet Tian to keep the heart of rheumatism with him. Lord Patriarch is right. "I accept," Niet Tian said with a smile after thinking for a moment. Faced with so many powerhouses of the Heaven Pardon clan, he had no choice but to accept it as the great priest. The good news for him was that the people of the Heaven Pardon clan would not dare to kill him.